Zach, are you ready? We do have a quorum.
Welcome everyone. Today is Tuesday, April 14th. Pickens County Planning and Zoning meeting, continuation from our meeting on the. We have present Doug, Suzanne, Debbie, myself. Do we have anyone, other commissioners online yet?
No, we do not.
Okay. Do we have any comments from the commissioners in general? Planning staff? Alright. We are going to, I guess, continue did we close public comment the last time? Or should we need to reopen
Public
it?
comment's still open,
Okay,
so.
public comment's still open. We will be taking public comment at the end of the presentation today. So that's it, so. Oh, go ahead, yeah.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm J.R. Fielding with Jacobson Daniels. I'm the Airfield Program Manager. I'm helping with the oversight of the airport modernization program. Today at the table, I do have Diane Jackson, the Airport Director, and Ryan Mahoney, the Deputy County Manager. We have a couple supporting slides just to help further the conversation that this commission had last week. There's also a lot of information that's available that we're going to discuss on the Aspen Airport website. It's aspenairport.com/airport modernization. And you'd also ask for a basic list of the different components of each of the projects. We actually really liked the list that Suzanne Wolf had provided to you in the resolution. And so we have just a couple slides that just reiterate those bullets. So as you are deliberating, you have those in front of you. Again, this project has a very, very long history. And this iteration of it really kicked off in 2019 with the ASE visioning process. Through that process and over 120 citizens named to various boards. Suzanne, I believe you participated with the Community Character Working Group. They created a list of 14 different common ground recommendations, and those recommendations are really a lot of the guiding light to the design process that's happening. Some of your conversation last week really revolved around the sustainability of the new airport, which is the Common Ground Recommendation 2. Number 3, which is seamless ground connectivity. 6, you saw a presentation from the FBO and how they're going to try to present this community well. Number 7, to build a new terminal. Number 8, to enhance the traveler and staff experience. We discussed that. Provide and design for 6 to 8 gates. You saw a plan with the various gates and the flex gates, which is another one of these. And so Diane's going to talk just a little bit about how this has been structured to make sure that community input is heard through the design process.
So thank you, Diane Jackson. I was online last week while traveling, so I did hear some of your concerns. So hopefully I can address those. If I don't, please feel free to ask me. I am fortunate enough to be accompanied by, I saw at least a few of our Airport Advisory Board members behind me as well. So backing up to 2018, we had gone through an 18-month visioning process with the community. As a result of that, we came out with the 15 common ground recommendations that were adopted by the BOCC. Included in that was a formation of our Airport Advisory Board of 12 members. That includes 3 ex officios from Snowmass, City of Aspen, and Basalt. So we have a really good group that are very committed to these common ground recommendations, meeting a safe facility. Meanwhile, keeping in mind the community's vision for the airport and the community. So I'm extremely proud to be here with them, working on all of those goals. And those are, just like GR said, on our website. There are guiding posts for everything that we do at the airport.
So last week, there was a lot of conversation around sound and emissions, and while we look through the WOMP and the AACP, and I think some of that goes to character, there isn't a lot of very specific guidance, but there is in the Common Ground recommendations, and it is something that Airport Advisory Board is taking a very hard look at. And so on this slide, you can see on the left, there is the locations of the air monitors. And so that is looking at the composition of the air in those areas and looking at the emissions. And then on the right, those are where the sound monitoring equipment is located.
I'm happy to go into detail on these two programs that I'm very proud that the Airport Advisory Board has taken on, both voluntary, just showing our commitment to being a good partner for the community. The left one with the emissions monitoring, there are two larger buildings that you'll see on either end of the airport, 1 and 2. I call them little shacks, basically, that are monitoring with other pieces, the other 7 pieces being smaller solar powered units that are collecting data. We have done that in close coordination with Public Health, with Kurt Dahl, a Mead and Hunt team that has specialty in this for airports as well as county leadership. So the noise, we went from seasonal noise monitoring to year-round noise monitoring, added multiple locations. We have 9 total there that are sending data back and really coming back with improvements and recommendations for a voluntary program. Noise is highly regulated by the FAA along with emissions, but we're doing our best to do voluntary programs like so many airports. And I will tell you, most airport operators do want to comply. They do want to be good partners. There are partners in the community too. Most of them have residents here or operate in and out of here, and they do not like their names out there that they have been not a great partner for us. We're also very fortunate to be one of the very few airports that do have curfew. We do everything we can to protect that because it was pre-INCA, and you can't get that anymore. So we do our best to protect that as well. So there's a lot of things that the Airport Advisory Board is very focused on, and these two being very important to them.
Okay, I'm gonna talk a little bit about process. So a lot of the folks that have been helping to move this project forward have been part of a pretty robust public outreach. And I appreciate the fact that while you are all citizens, I think some of you have been involved in, at least in the visioning portion of this airport modernization, but maybe not totally aware of the process that got us to this point. So I thought today I'd just talk a little bit about that because, I think the main point I'd like to make is just the community input that has gone in to get us to this point, which I think is important for the design ultimately. So Diane did touch a little bit on the visioning process. So we had 120 folks involved in that, and what ultimately came out of that multi-year process was the BOCC passing a resolution that adopted the Common Ground recommendations. So those Common Ground recommendations have been sort of the North Star for the design process. Our task forces, which I'll talk about in just a moment, have used that when they are getting sort of progress on the design, when that's shared with them. They're taking a look at the design progress through that lens of the Common Ground recommendations. But first, coming out of the resolution that was passed that adopted those Common Ground recommendations was sort of a continuation of that vision committee in the form of an airport advisory board. So the BOCC still wanted input from folks that were just focused on the airport. Subsequent to that, we were directed to come up with a new airport layout plan. So that airport layout plan is basically engaging the FAA and getting their approval ultimately on sort of the general layout and uses on the airport property. So that was completed in 2022. Not long ago, about 9 months ago, less than a year, as part of continuing our progress, we got the environmental clearances that were associated with that airport layout plan. So that allows us to continue to move forward with modernizing the airport. We did hire a design team also coming up on a year ago now. And at the same time, just before that, the Airport Advisory Board identified members of the public that had an interest in helping with the design process. So there were task forces, and those two task forces, there were 9 members each originally on those. We've had one person that wasn't able to continue, but we still have a very strong presence of those folks. And they're concentrating on the terminal design specifically, and then also the multimodal transportation component of the airport project. So all along the way, we've had opportunity to check in with our task forces as different design milestones are met, and then off to the AAB, the Airport Advisory Board, and then ultimately to the county commissioners to make sure that these milestones that we're reaching are in accord with those common ground recommendations ultimately. One of the things I wanted to mention in this application that you all have in front of you, just based on the timing of when we're putting this forward, is you don't have a final design for what that terminal looks like. You have an FBO that's pretty far along, and a runway that's coming pretty far along. But that was just sort of the nature of where we were in the process and the timing. That's a pretty critical timing path for us to align the two projects ultimately, as far as construction goes. So it's a lot based on a lot of the comments I heard last week. I think this really is still a work in progress. I heard comments on the size, the scale, the height, those kind of things. Those are appreciated comments and things that we're also hearing from our task force members. So I think this will continue to evolve, and again, we're leaning on those common ground recommendations to really ultimately get us to a place where we have a design that really makes sense for the community. The other few things I would just mention in closing is that this effort is backed by 3 ballot initiatives that we had. I'm sure you all have either participated in them or been aware of them, but we have been enjoying some tailwinds because of those. We have a general sentiment and I'd say based on how public votes typically go, an overwhelming support for moving this project forward as far as the community is concerned. And so I think that has been good for us, and then I think also the community outreach effort that we have had. I haven't been witness to something this extensive in my career thus far, so I'm very much living it at the moment, but there have been lots and lots of opportunities for people to give us input. And it's not just the AAB, it's not just these task forces. We've had open houses at every step of the way to gather input that have been very well attended, anywhere from 150 to 300 people making their way through to check out the design. And then finally, surveys. So those surveys have also been well, I guess, responded to that have really helped to inform the design as we move along. So that's really it. I just wanted to make sure that you all knew sort of where we came from and kind of how we got here, and that we do continue on the design process, and we appreciate the feedback you gave us.
So, to relate to the airfield projects, the list that's on the screen is what that is comprised of. Last week, we had another one of our check-in meetings with the FAA, and we got to discuss all the various pieces and parts of this. And they are all interconnected. The first bullet is the reconstruction and 80-foot shift and widening of the runway. That is to eliminate the main modification of standard at the airport. To increase the efficiency and to best serve all of the flying public, rebuilding and reconfiguring all the taxiway connectors to Alpha is that piece. The airfield lighting vault is a small building to support all of the functionality of the lights on the airfield that demonstrate where those connectors are, where the end lights are, where the edge lights are. The de-ice pad is one of the elements that is at end of life. One of the many Band-Aid projects that's happening before we can reconstruct it is on the de-ice pad to get that through until hopefully 2028 when we get to reconstruct it. Commercial apron will need to be realigned for the new terminal. The rebuild of the vehicular service road is the road inside the fence that circumnavigates the airport. That needs to be moved in areas because it's inside the object-free area, which is one of the safety zones of the airport. To facilitate that, we do need to shift Owl Creek Road. And also the airport operations center parking changes. Those are really because those parking spaces now will then be in the new runway object-free area. Owl Creek pipe extension goes up the hill a bit so that can facilitate the movement of Owl Creek across the airport so it does not get contaminated. And then we also have to rehabilitate taxiway A towards the end of the project because that is the one piece that doesn't move, but it is getting towards the end of its life as well. So that's that list of projects, and so as you all have your conversations, we can bring that up. If you have any questions on the airfield projects, I'm more than happy to answer those. Suzanne did a really good job of talking about some of the temporary impact projects. So near the boneyard, we discussed that, the temporary asphalt plant and aggregate production that would be on that west side, along with some material processing areas and a temporary construction access. And then also the contractor staging where it could also be a temporary rental car facility next to the battery energy storage system. Next, though, Charles Cuniff with CCA is going to come up and discuss a little bit more about how the terminal design got to where it's at.
Oh, yeah.
I can pull a chair over there.
What's listed though on the screen right now, this is the array of projects that are associated with the terminal. Everything that is touching the terminal, from just airside, a portion of that apron, to all of the land side. So the service roads, the parking, the entryways, those sorts of things that we discussed last week, those are all associated with the commercial terminal.
Ideally, we'd all love to see a finished building to review, and we're not there yet. We're working diligently on fine tuning the design of the building and working incrementally at reducing the building in square footage, tightening things up, and we're doing the best we can there, and there's an ongoing process there. We'll have a CMAR on board in a few weeks, and we will be doing some budgeting there, which inevitably will cause some cost-cutting measures to be necessary, which probably will trim the building even further. what's approved in the ALP is a building of up to 140,000 square feet. We are currently at 128 and working down from there. But 33% of that building is below grade, so about 42,000 square feet is below grade. Effectively, the above grade portion of the building currently is 86,000 square feet. And in terms of height, it is, because the site goes up towards the apron from the road, you're never at a point to see the full height of the building because you're always looking up at an angle and it steps back. So the front part of the building, the entry portion of the building is currently at 25 feet. And then it's 15 feet above that, 100 feet back. So the upper level that goes over where the jet bridges would be for the planes, if we end up with jet bridges, and that may not be the case either. That is, it'd be 30 feet at the apron level, but the perception from the front is it's 25 feet at the entrance to the building, and then 15 feet higher than that, beyond that, 100 feet back. So what you'll see from any point of view is not a big building. The building is relatively long because the planes take so much space to park, and that generates the length of the building. And as you can see from the plan, the planes actually go past the length of the building like they do today. The building today is quite a bit shorter than the planes that are out on the field. There are essentially 9 parking spaces out in the field now. The approval for this terminal was 6 to 8 gates, but we're showing 7 gates as our intended number of gates that we provide. Most of the back of house stuff is below grade, and that's baggage and all the mechanical systems. There's a considerably large footprint required for things like TSA and baggage handling. There's the makeup and baggage makeup area that goes back of TSA. When you put your bags into ticketing, it goes in and it goes onto to belts that screen the bags for safety and security before they go up to a tug to go on the plane. And when bags come in, they go into turnstiles that then deliver the bags to people. So both of those take a lot of space. That's really where a lot of the space requirements come from. A lot of the baggage handling today is outside, not a great condition for the workers. But the main thing I wanted to share today, because this is locations and extents, we can't do anything about the fact that there's an airport there, and we want to build a proper terminal at the airport, and that is what the common ground called for. We just want you to understand that we're doing the best we can to make the terminal itself not a big element, but an appropriate element for the passengers and visitors past, and most importantly for the workers that have to work in the airport, which currently are working in a very inferior environment. The materials will all be natural materials from around here, and natural lighting and things like that, like we would have to do for any project. So just keep that in mind in your comments. I'll sit here in case you have questions.
Yeah, I have a question. Charles, a minute ago, you said currently we're at 128,000 square feet in the terminal, but that, you don't mean that exists now?
No, the existing terminal.
That's your model
Correct.
you're working with?
In the scheme up here, the orange is the existing terminal, and the section right to the right of it, you can see is the effective footprint of the new terminal. The light blue area is ticketing, the purple area is baggage claim, and TSA is the reddish area behind the light blue area. The rest of it is baggage makeup, belts, and security, and hold rooms.
And its current square footage?
It's about 66, it's between 64 and 66,000 square feet when you include everything that's a part of the terminal today.
Thank you.
Again, something to point out is the purple area on the far right is the de-ice area, which is not as large, which is far larger than what we have out there today. And that, between that, which is a requirement, and the orange, which is the existing terminal, the only place we have to build this terminal is that space that's left over in between. The existing terminal is sort of in a hole. There's a lot of grade change along the length of the terminal. There's a 32-foot drop. So we have a lot of grade to deal with. And it's about 15 to 20 feet from the highway up to the terminal in terms of grade from highway to apron. So there's a lot of topography that really is hard to appreciate just from a site plan.
Are there other buildings on that map that aren't, I know there's the transportation center, which is the square towards the top.
Right.
What about above the icing?
That's an admin building. It's an administrative building. It's currently somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 square feet.
But that, both of those squares are rectangle.
Charles, you said that there's below grade space?
Yes.
I kinda got the impression last week that there couldn't be because of just the apron needing to line up. What is in the basement?
The below grade space is the back of TSA, and it's the baggage makeup. It goes from TSA through security and gets screened through the machines that TSA screens bags that you're not carrying, the bags that have been checked. Those checked bags go through a screening process,
Okay,
similar to but different than what you do when you take your bag yourself through screening.
right.
So there's two screening systems essentially.
And then, what is just the square footage of just the footprint?
I actually don't know that. It's about, it's roughly half of what the building square footage is.
Okay, so 60.
Yeah.
I got the impression also last week that there was 3 stories,
Well,
but
if
was
you,
that just the parking structure?
well, if you include the basement, or the
Okay.
below grade space, the below grade space is 15 feet high.
Okay.
There's an interstitial space where the tugs come in and move bags around, and that's only about 15 feet high. And then there's the hold rooms, which that will vary based on our design and how much we want to have for views and overhang to shield from the sun and weather protection. So that's part of what we're evolving now, and we understand that keeping the appearance of the building modest is an important driving factor. You can, as you can imagine, you can do a spec house like developers do to make it look really big, or you can build that same number of square footage in a more modest way. Our overall intent is to make this modest, humble, but appropriate for our community.
I have a couple of questions, Charles. So there's 12 jets that are parked there, is that just illustrative? You said there were 7 gates?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
can talk to that, Charles.
Okay, sure.
So what you're seeing right now, Joe, a number of those are airplanes that are parked in the background image at the existing terminal, so near the orange building. And then to the right would represent the actual gate positions. I think that this graphic actually does a really good job. It actually shows the flex gates really well as well. So you have 7 positions for the smaller jets. And then it shows how the larger, say an A220, would take up 2 positions. So even though it holds more passengers, they're taking up 2 gates with that jet. So that's the whole idea behind the flex gates.
Okay.
Yeah, you can never occupy all gates with a larger aircraft.
Is it fair to say too, just you could have 7 gates with 7 planes, and then there's a few overnight parking spaces, that people aren't unloading and loading, they're just a holding space overnight.
You'll hear us refer to those as raw and remain overnight, and we do not load or unload from those positions.
They come in the night before, sometimes to take people out first thing in the morning.
Last week, there was a perspective of the terminal building that had a person standing in it, and I believe the ceiling was about this high, all glass on the front. Do you have that slide?
No, that's not where we are today.
All right, well,
What did you mean by that?
That's an older scheme, and that was also a section cut through the GTC, which incorporated the ground transportation. Scheme.
Don't say ski.
what kind of scheme?
A version of a concept,
Okay, get it.
the concept of a plan.
So you're not talking about that now, you're talking about something a little bit lower profile. Does that look like a, 25, 30 foot high,
Agreed.
kind of atrium, all glass.
That is not the intent.
Do you have anything, in terms of where you are now on the 128,000? In terms of, I guess when, last time you were talking that you were at schematic design still.
Yeah, we're in schematic design still.
So it sounds like, it's 25 feet from the road and then another 15 feet, 100 feet back, you said, so it's 40 feet tall.
Correct.
And that upper level would be the 15-foot plate height, roughly, something like that is what you're telling me? or
Yeah.
Something in that range, because the 25 feet below is gonna be the story and a half for the ground, for the area.
Right.
I mean, I really appreciate the comments about appropriate for the community. I think it's really important that someone doesn't come to ask and say, oh my God, the airport's amazing. I don't think that's important. I think it's important that they like the mountain, they like the bells, they like the restaurants, they like the people. The airport should be as understated as absolutely possible, functional, usable, user-friendly, but a statement like the airport, to me, means nothing.
Personally,
And I think that the community would agree with that statement.
I would agree, it should be comfortable and maybe surprisingly modest.
I think that's hopefully it's not surprisingly, but it's modest.
I mean, for the visitor to expect something else
Yes,
of Aspen,
exactly.
to have it be something that's more appropriate.
Or appropriate for our community. I think that the other concern we're having is we're being asked to approve, this is our only bite the apple essentially, there aren't going. And so while everybody has these modest conversations with us, and as soon as L&E, we're out, there's no zoning, there's, as I understand, county building with L&E, they can spit whatever they want and it goes through. There's no zoning review or anything like that. So that is something that we are absolutely struggling with.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with.
I was following up just with exactly what Doug said. I mean, my comments that I came up with after the last meeting were, this is a location and extent review. I think the location we're pretty locked in on, right? And the definition in the code of extent, size, scale, intensity, visual impact, we're being asked all to basically approve or disapprove all of those things without really any, with information that's fluid. But 140, 120, 3 stories, jet bridges, no jet bridges, how it all looks, and just, to echo what Doug said, that's a tough, position for, the extent part is where we're at, and so if those extent items cannot be defined where we can grasp what they really are and that effect and how it applies to the code, whether it's in conformance with the code or not.
Well, that's where we're being asked to ask if it's in conformance with a old comprehensive plan.
Yep.
When we have all the knowledge of what the new comprehensive plan is going to be, and it's going to be adopted, I'm supposing on May the 12th.
Right.
It was almost adopted just a few weeks ago, and then because we had some reservations about one part of it, we had to extend the public hearing. But that's not your problem.
You're being asked to operate in faith in some ways, and I'm hoping that I believe what I'm saying in terms of modest approach is important to us.
I think that the thing I saw, and I really appreciate the information that was very clear and helpful. And one of the things that Tom Brown said, open air jetways, that's not what we heard last week. I think that open air jetways are, from my understanding, allow a smaller building, although we have to get to it. Get out to it, walk up to it. I think that's really important. I'm glad it was there. I'd never seen that before. And the design, you mentioned it just a second ago, Charles, whether the jetways are not. The design intent, very clear. it's not.
I would say we don't know. It's one thing to go on faith on a, 1,000 square foot cabin. It's another thing to do it on one of the biggest projects in the valley, if not the biggest project that I've probably seen in my lifetime. And a lot's been mentioned here about the common ground recommendations, but I wanna note in the packet that we have includes resolution number 105/2020, the resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Pitkin County, Colorado, approving Pitkin County Board of Commissioners amendments and additions to the ASC Vision Committee Common Ground recommendations and airport map for Aspen-Pitkin County Airport. And those include in part, the attachment, which is the common ground recommendations that were approved, environmental responsibility to address noise pollution, air pollution, light pollution that don't seem to have been planned for, retain a rural and small town feel, which we're talking about right now, reasonable growth, modest expansion, which I think we're all concerned with here, but again, we're just asking to take this on faith, but these are some of the core recommendations that the committee put forth. The reduced noise by at least 30% has always caused me to question what noise, where, when, how, and we're not talking about that right now. So, and then we have the flexible gates, the 6 to 8, which we talked about, but again, jet bridge, no jet bridge, we don't really know. They did recommend leaving the runway where it is, but the BOCC decided otherwise later on, but that is the only piece of this that has been changed to my knowledge. And also the recommendations wanted great data and measurements, solid baseline for greenhouse gas, NOx emissions, et cetera, derived from models and actual testing. And in future years, measure, use models and air quality testing. Every year a progress report to the BOCC and Airport Advisory Board. So many measurements of, in my opinion, noise, but certainly particulates, which, okay, we have monitoring stations, but where's the history of the measurements? Let's look at them. I've seen some on the airport website on the noise side, which is my key concern, because it does have to do with planning and zoning and what we can do for adjoining, not just adjoining properties, but properties affected by the airport. But where are they? They're from shoulder months, a couple of observations out there. Let's see the data and let's measure. And let's do what the Common Ground Committee recommended. Keep this in an appropriate character for the community.
And we currently are, and you wanna interrupt, but that our board is extremely committed to both that you just said, hence our monitoring of both emissions as well as noise, and creating a program to help these pilots understand how they can be better community partners for us. So I will say the advisory board takes those common ground recommendations extremely serious.
And I would add, it's not just the pilots, it's really letting homeowners know what can be done. We did hear from someone noting in conversations with a friend at the WJ that plane noise drowning out the conversation where you have to pause, and that is an indicia of too much noise. There can be a noise management plan that would allow homeowners to receive funding for noise abatement in existing residences that would be affected by increased airport activity. But we don't seem to be going there in these recommends. I haven't seen any mention of those in these plans, as well as, again, it'll be incumbent upon us not to have people build new residences in affected areas, and we need to know what those are. The only thing that will tell us that is these studies.
So I will say that I think you're probably referencing a Part 150 study, and that is to address contours. And whether we all agree the FAA standard is 65 DNL, and to current, our 65 is negotiable off-site. So it's not spreading to those sensitive areas like residents, churches, schools, et cetera. So they have very strict guidance on that 150, but it had been talked about. I just talked to our noise consultants. They have looked at that, but unfortunately, we will not get federal funds for anything that is less than the 65 contour.
But we can, well, that we can talk about in more depth, that's getting more granular. But the county's standard is 55, and we don't have a 65 here.
Understood.
Let me ask you a quick procedure question. Are there, is the FBO gonna present, or have you guys presented everything and?
So, Joe, we did have just the same kind of project list from the FBO.
Okay.
We realized that they were, pretty short on time last time, but, there wasn't a huge substance of
So you-
questions for them,
So
but,
the applicant, so to speak, has kind of made their presentation at this point, or? do you have-
largely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have other slides that can help answer, different
Okay,
types of
yeah.
questions that come up, but,
Yeah, we're here today for more follow-up questions and
Yes.
more questions after the presentation, since our last meeting went so long. Go ahead, Jay.
Just addressing, studying the air quality, and we're studying it, and it's great. Whether we're studying everything that's out there, but what happens if all of a sudden the studies reveal that the air quality is really bad? And the airport's been built, the terminal's done, planes are there. I mean, it kinda seems like the study, we should know some of the results of the study before we approve all this stuff.
All the results.
Yeah, I mean, at least have a full year-round, high season, low season trend of what kind of air quality we're talking about, and and
You know,
what can be done about it.
what I would say to that is the measure that we just heard read of study, that is contained in the common ground recommendations, not in the WOMP, for example. And so the WOMP does mention things like air, the environment, air quality, those kind of things. More specifically, we have a board, the AAB, that has taken up the task of studying and ideally abating any issues that come up on the airport. Whether we build a new airport or we don't build a new airport, the idea is that we would be doing whatever we can to help with those issues, but today, we don't have any information that says there are air quality issues or that there are the noise issues. The other issue that you run into is we can't regulate the number of airplanes that come in here. We can't regulate how they're going to take off and land at a whim. That has to go through a process. So, I think for purposes of today's meeting, I mean, this is good conversation and it's good to, kind of get this out, that's an ongoing concern about I'll just case them in environmental concerns. We understand that and we're going to continue to do more about that, but I would argue that the airport we're looking to build is going to be more compliant with this master plan, for example, that you're going to adopt than the current one is. And I think that it's our aim to modernize it, right? Make this building environmentally sustainable, add, measures physically on the landscape that help with noise, and then could even help with air quality, and that also goes for the air handling and whatnot in this new building. So I think we're in agreement with all of that. The timing is such that we are continuing to collect the data that we've been tasked to do. And I will say, from what I've learned, because I'm not an airport expert by training, is this air quality study, for example, that we put forward, had to be, an entire model needed to be created so that the data collected could be interpreted and then compared to FAA standards for air quality. So we're doing that, we're making good on that. Some folks in the community would like to have us take that further, and that's gonna be a conversation that continues with the BOCC. But we've invested already well over $1 million in this step one. And so, as we're trying to build an airport, to continue to just tack things on and say, well, we need to do this, we need to do this, and we need to do it all simultaneously, we also have to look at our budget and make sure that we can balance these things. And I think we've put our best foot forward on starting all of these things that we've been asked to do. So, I can say that we're in agreement, it's gonna continue to evolve, but we are doing our best to kind of stay in lockstep with what we heard from the community and what these plans that you all are tasked with reviewing look like compared to this design.
And Ryan, we all have good intentions, and we all have good intentions and each other's best interest at heart. We have that as sincerely as the county does. But somebody sent this question to us, right now. And it was, is this the location? Now that we know what the county is proposing, is applying for, the question that somebody came in here and asked was, is this the right location? Can this particular location handle this extent, this measure of impact? And at first, after last week's meeting, I thought, why are we being asked this now? Because if you stand back here just as a citizen, what I kept thinking this past week, this song kept coming to mind, the one about slowing your Mustang down. And I thought, why is it that now the Mustang is 110 miles an hour out there? Are they turning and asking us, how are we doing? I finally realized that it wouldn't have appropriately been asked a year ago, 6 months ago, because the county didn't know what it was asking for. It does feel, I do feel now a little pushed inappropriately by being asked, is this the right location? You're on the Planning and Zoning Commission, so you're apparently the one to ask, is this the right location for this particular application? And is this the extent, the intensity appropriate for that location? And I do feel like there's somebody out there ahead of me that has all of you working and drawing lines and coloring in spaces and coming up with square footages and all, and calling back to me to say, oh, by the way, is this the right location for this? So when I hear the question asked a few minutes ago, the data, is it being monitored? Are we monitoring air quality? And the answer is yes, we're doing that. The Air Advisory Board is doing it. The Airport Advisory Board is doing it. That's not really the question we should be asking. It was, what are you learning? And can we afford, as a community, that extent? Can we afford, what I see from coming from, like the Maroon Creek Caucus and, the Woody Creek Caucus and the Brush Creek Caucus, they're telling me that their health is their mental health and their physical health is being hurt. And they don't know what measure. But we can't keep just saying to them, we're checking on it, we're gonna find out. We cannot move ahead as as far as I'm concerned, until we know where we stand right now. It behooves us to stand and hug a tree until all the data is in. I mean, even, this was shocking to me. The Environmental Health Department, when, these were their referral comments, the Pitkin County Environmental Health Department, when they were asked to tell us what they know about whether this is advisable or not, this was their answer. This is a fast-moving project with a number of moving parts and unknown information. We can't move forward from that. I mean, we shouldn't. It may turn out, one option, one answer might be to maybe to the disappointment of many of us, we can't afford this. Our health can't afford it. Our physical health, our mental health can't afford it. We can't afford it in money. People that we're begging for money from are saying, no, not unless you do it like this, and we may not want to do it like that. What I think you have been asked several times by this commission, by commission members tonight is, don't just tell me that you're monitoring it. Before I make this decision, tell me what you're learning. And now we have, as you know, more information from a private group led by a pretty distinguished physicist who is saying you're not even measuring the most dangerous parts of what are coming out of airplanes. And maybe we can afford this and maybe we cannot. But we need to know more, and it's not because we're dragging our feet. I can't answer a question when I don't have the information available.
Can I, since we've finished the presentation, do you want to take public comment? And then come back and
I'm gonna just
do
take,
comments
I
from
think we'll
P&Z or
do
anything?
some commissioner questions really quick
Okay.
while we're doing this, and
Okay.
then we'll go to public.
I've got a couple questions. So, is it accurate that the community ground recommendations were a 75,000 to 90,000 square foot terminal?
I think that was discussed, that is not the number in here to
Who's
it.
on
I
the
do think
number?
that was
What's
discussed in there, and
inside?
GR, you may be able to
So,
enlighten us a little
you know,
better.
in the language of the common ground recommendations, and I don't remember exactly if there is the 90,000, it was discussed at the time. What we talked about last week with that was, when that number was established, the assumption is that we had about 45,000, and double that should be about right. That was before any of the programming was done, with that. I think Charles and his team, when they look at some of the other common ground recommendations, like having a seat, you know, for all the passengers and things like that, really challenges what you can do with square footage as well when you try to meet some of those other recommendations.
And another question, so under the current design of the terminal, whether it's 128,000 or 140 or whatever, how many seats are there?
The math is, if you have 7 gates and you have 76 people per gate, if you're all full, that'd be 532 seats. But the plan would be slightly shy of that, because the hope is that all 7 gates aren't always active, so you can move around in there. But we also have to leave room for the 3 or more flights that we've all experienced, where there's a cancellation or postponement. Flights delayed 2 hours, 3 hours, and other people have arrived for their flight, which is going to go, or it's also delayed. You have a lot of people in the community hanging out there, very uncomfortably. So we have to be sensitive to
And
that.
so, you know, another question, I guess, would be, and I guess, you know, not whatever, I'm just trying to understand a few things. In terms of the capacity of the terminal and the number of people, is it designed for, that's designed for maximum capacity?
No.
Or is this average, or, I mean, you got 7 aircraft out there, you know, whatever, A320s, A220s, and the passenger capacity of what is gonna be allowed with the new with a new widened runway. As I understand, that those planes are like 120, 130 passenger aircraft.
The planes that are out there now is 76 seats, and if you
So
have,
that's what you used when you said
right,
70,
but if you have a
76,
220 there, it takes 2 of those spots. And so you'd have 120 people instead of 140 people.
Right,
Right, so,
I see.
there's actually less people out there if the plane, if there are bigger planes out there.
okay.
Any other questions right now before we take public comment? I guess I just have one comment here. I just wanna keep the board on task as well and remind everyone, you know, we're here for location and extent. And the standards that we are using are that, you know, unfortunately, the WAMP plan and the 2012 Aspen Area Community Plan, and so some of those key policy themes, preserving visual openness, maintaining low profile development, protecting the Highway 82 corridor, the 20-acre parcel that's mentioned in the WAMP plan multiple times, and avoiding visual dominance, maintaining open space buffers, and all those things. So, you know, when you tell me that we're gonna take this airport and double the size of the square footage, and that it will still comply or comply better with that WAM plan, without really seeing the structure of it, the size, the story poles, and having it still be fluid, it's a lot to ask, you know? So, yeah, and I think the main thing is, the question I keep asking is expansion, you know, versus modernization, and how that applies to our extent evaluation. And I think a lot of these, when I take all these elements by themselves, the runway shift, that's modernization, tarmac, safety, I take all this stuff, and when you take them all individually, that's all modernization, which I have. More safety, more modernization, I'm in total agreement with that. But then when you take all 15 of those things and compile them together in one thing, it's not modernization anymore, it's expansion. So I keep kind of coming back to that balance and how it applies to the scale and the extent, the corridor views, the things that we're being tasked with tonight. So that's just my comment. Yep. And then we're gonna open up to public comment right now. So if anyone from the public would like to comment, they can come forward, and we're gonna limit our public comment to 3 minutes tonight. So you can just come up and state your name. There's not gonna be a buzzer or a bell or anything.
I'm gonna raise
Just
my
so you
hand and
know.
do 10.
Cut your audio.
And if you are online, just real quick, if you're online, please raise your hand, and when we get done with public comment in the room, we will get to the people online.
Oh, please, come on up.
My name's Ellen Anderson, Aspen Village, and I had 3 minutes prepared, but I'm gonna go completely off script because I have to comment on what I heard today. Debbie, spot on, absolutely spot on. We need a year information. We don't have a year information. However, Aspen Flywright has 2 weeks' information, and I'd like to present that to you. The county has presented nothing. Where do I even begin? In 2019, I asked for air quality. I only have 3 minutes. The county would have nothing to do with it.
Aspen Flywright has picked up the ball, taking safety on the air and on the ground literally. This is safety on the ground. Ultrafine particles kill as surely as plane crashes do. Suzanne, your comment, we cannot move ahead until we know where we are. Absolutely agree with that. We can't ask questions if we don't have information. Please take one of these, pass them along. Tried to get it put up on the screen, but was not accommodated in that by the county, so bear with me and look at a paper copy, and I'll go through this as quickly as I can. Since I talked to you last week, we have a couple more days worth of data. Aspen Flywright, I hope you can see this. The vertical axis is the number of particulates, the horizontal axis is the time of day. This could not be more clear. When the particulates are low is when the airport is closed. When the particulates are high is 7 o'clock, they spike when the airport opens. This is not definitive, it's only 4 days or 5 days, but it's more days than you had last week. And last week, well, first of all, the dotted red line is what the World Health Organization says is the high level. You should not go above that level. Last week, we were going 4 and 5 times above that level. In the next couple days, we're going 20 times above that level. We don't know why more. It could be wind, it could be the type of aircraft. The point is, we don't know. But this is real data, and it's the only real data that has been produced. It is not definitive, it's only, a couple weeks we have. This is only a couple consecutive days. You need a year of data. Through Open Records, I got the contract with Mead and Hunt. They were supposed to start measuring in May of 2025. They're a year late, almost. Their equipment still is not totally up and running. It's mostly up and running, but not totally. And we haven't learned anything. They're a year late. Another thing is, and Debbie, you asked a very good question, exactly the question I asked of the Airport Advisory Board exactly in July. What are you gonna do if you find the air after you've done the studies is toxic? I was told, we have mitigation plans. I said, how can I find the mitigation plans? Well, you have to file a CORA report. I filed a CORA report, supposed to come in 3 days. 5 months later, I did not have an answer. I nagged, I refiled, I gave public comments, where is it, please, phone calls, nothing, so I hired a lawyer. My lawyer reached out to Pickens County and got an answer in 2 days. And the answer was, why didn't you talk to us? And then the other answer was, we don't have those plans. There are no mitigation plans. So the county doesn't know, as of last December, what they're gonna do if the air comes back toxic. My friends, this is a matter of life and death as surely as plane crashes. Number one, safety on the air and on the ground. This is on the ground. Please, you cannot make a decision till you have the information. Aspen Flywright has started. We're sharing our information. It needs to be longitudinal. And Pickens County needs to measure all the other stuff that they're measuring, which is important, and share it with us. And by the way, fun fact, Colorado was the first state in 2025 to declare ultrafines toxic.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
Can I ask you this question?
Please.
Where is this monitor? There's one device, right?
We have
Where's
bought
it
3
located?
devices, 2 are yet to be deployed. This one is, I'm not gonna tell you where, we are not trespassing,
I see.
but we are next to the runway, and we are in a place where we have a right to be. If
In the-
we have-
Near the flight path or something like that?
It's next to the runway, and it's where people are, next to the runway,
Right.
where people are breathing. We have begged Pickens County, why don't you, we've paid for this. I asked Jeff Woodruff, can you get $50,000 and get this extra equipment? He said, no, we don't have it, and we can't change budgets, and so we said, we'll just go out and
No,
buy
I'm
it.
just curious where it is. And
Well,
then,
we-
do you know how how does it create this graph? I mean, do
It's-
like
it's
these
a-
particles fall from the sky and then they get gathered and you have a timeline and that's
Let's-
what creates these dots?
We need a work session. I only have 3 minutes. The short answer is, it's called the Modulaire UFP, and it's manufactured by a company called Quant AQ, which is run by 2 guys who have PhDs in atmospheric chemistry from MIT. We have begged Picken County, just let us put our instruments, let's hook them onto yours. You have 8 places or however many places. We spent the $50,000, just let us let us hang it on your pole. And they said no. And the ski company has said no. So we found our own place and it's legal and we have a right to be there. It shouldn't be this hard. Picken County should be doing it, and if they don't wanna do it, just cooperate with us. Just let us be in the same location. Thank you.
Is the company that you are using for their equipment the same company that Pitkin County is already using?
Yes.
For its monitoring?
They're using the same manufacturer for different monitoring. I think they're using the Modulaire for particles larger than ultrafines. We're using the Modulaire for UFPs, ultrafine particles, same manufacturer. Obviously, it's a very reputable company. And I've also hired professional data analysts, third party, no skin in the game, to analyze the data. So it's absolutely above board, clean, and it's the only information you have so far. And it should be longitudinal, but we've started, and we're paying for it ourselves. And I just cannot imagine why Picken County has balked and balked and balked. Okay, but thank you.
Thanks, Ellen.
Thank you.
Anyone else, public comment? Tony, please.
Plop. Excuse me while I get organized here.
Speaking into that.
Oh,
Yeah.
this one, okay, I
Big white one.
guess I better,
That
oh, this
one,
one right
yep.
here. Never spoken in one of these before. So for the record, my name is Toni Kronberg, and I'd like to thank the PNC for continuing the public hearing. And in full disclosure, I worked at the airport for over 25 years, and I worked in many different departments. I was the manager of the FBO, I threw luggage for pick and portage, I did operations, I was security, I was medic, did overnight security. I understand every square inch of that airport over 25 years in probably 10 to 15 different positions. It's my understanding that we don't have a choice in moving the runway, according to the federal government. It's a safety issue, they have to comply with standards. If we don't comply with the feds, then we lose a lot of the funding that we have currently for the airport. The second thing is that I want to focus my comments on location and extent, because that's what the purpose of my understanding is of this public hearing. Through my 25 years of working at the airport, we are modernizing the airport. We're not expanding the airport. It may seem like we're expanding the airport, but in order to keep our airport safe and to provide the security that we need, we have to expand the terminal. I don't know how many of you have flown out there and you can't get in to check in. That is a high risk so far of security in this day and age. I would like to ask the planning and zoning to please approve this process, because this is only like the conceptual design. You'll be able to see more about the terminal. The terminal is low-lying, 30% of it is below grade. It captures the most beautiful views that we have in the whole valley. And what I like about it from a security standpoint is that people will be checking in on the bottom and then they go upstairs to chill out. And I can't begin to tell you how many years that people have had to stand outside the building just to get into the building. And then once they get into the building, there's nowhere for them to go. And I think the design has been very thoughtfully thought out. It's had the most community input I've ever seen in any project that I've been involved in. So far as the low profile, it definitely has a low profile. Highway 82, it's not going to impact Highway 82. In fact, the multimodal connection, where they have the terminal, it's a seamless connection. And I think most of you are aware that I'm working on a gondola project that stops off at the airport, starts at Brush Creek Park and Ride, runs parallel with Highway 82 that goes into Aspen. We have a placeholder for a position for that. The open spaces that are out there, it's going to be very well preserved. And I know that, if I may, Ellen's really concerned about the environmental, like we all are, but I'm more concerned about the 600 new residents across the street from the airport, with 600 new cars coming into our already congested Highway 82. And again, the purpose of this is location and extent. is not the environmental consequences of the airport, and that will be dealt with. But I would just like to say that I think most of the committees, the task forces, all the airport advisory board, I've been to every single meeting, and I have watched how they have painstakingly pulled this thing together. And then just to back up, I was part of that 120 member group, I don't know how many years ago it was, and then subcommittees to bring this to the point that it is right now. And I think most of you know me, that if I did not think this was a good project, I would definitely be bringing forward my criticisms and my critiques. But this is just a stepping stone in the process, and we need this. We really do. All right, thank you so much, I appreciate it.
And Tony, I must say that your phrase was really descriptive, but I've never heard it used before, that you threw luggage.
That what? Oh, I threw luggage. Yes, that was the very first job I had at the airport.
Whether you like it or not.
Thank you. There you go.
Thanks, Tony.
Got it?
Tony threw luggage into the airplanes that I was flying for SkyWest. CRJ line captain for 12 years, instructor. My name is Mike Solons. I also have had the privilege and honor of serving on this airport project since 2013, when we started on the environmental study. Following into the common ASC, common vision process, I was on the technical working group, and then got appointed to the advisory board, and currently I'm serving as co-chair along with Jim Light as the task force, terminal design task force chair. So I'm very involved in the project. I can tell you we've put a lot of time, not just me, the community volunteers. Tony stole a lot of what I was gonna say, and thank you for your comments, Tony, your positive comments. As to the air pollution, there's probably two ways to mitigate it, and the first is not an option. We're not shutting the airport down. We have this airport as a community to survive. But what we do as time progresses with newer airplanes, you have less pollution. And people have vilified the Gulfstream 650, for example. Well, the current Gulfstream, that 650 burns 10% less fuel than the ones that are operating now. But that airplane can't operate here because of the wingspan. So as we progress to a better, safer runway, we get newer H aircraft. The Airbus 220, which is carrying most of the passengers, burns probably 25% less fuel. We want that airplane here. We don't want the old CRJ. Even the ERJ is not much fuel efficient. So as time goes on, you get more efficient airplanes operating here. Our FBO, Jonathan's here. He could probably give you the numbers. We're selling sustainable aviation fuel. That only comes into most of the newer aircraft that are coming along. That Gulfstream 650 has been proven over the Atlantic flying on sustainable aviation fuel. So as far as pollution and particulates, you want to advance at least the airfield side to make sure you get the newer generation of airplanes. Sorry if I'm going long. I'm gonna try and hit the high points. On the terminal, I'm not gonna say we should build a 200,000 feet terminal, but it really doesn't matter too much because we're limited on operations. Diane, correct me, we're 36 planes per hour. You can't put more of that into our box just because of the way our value is configured and the way the airport operations go. So when you think of expansion, it doesn't mean more operations. We can't have it, and that's when the weather's good. When we're in instrument conditions, we're down to, Diane, correct me, is 18?
It cuts in half, and actually it's 14
It cuts in
now, and
half.
we cut down to
So you count the crappy weather days, it's even less, but you can't get more operations here. So it doesn't matter how big the terminal is. You physically can't get more operations per hour into the airport. So when you think about extent and expansion, don't think that this is a growth opportunity. It's really limited by the number of operations we have. Lastly, I'll finish. I have never seen a more community engaged process than what we have here between the vision process. Diane, as our airport director, has an outreach with our communications. What do we have, 16,000 community members on our?
Yeah, oh, for Facebook, yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is a community engaged project. Jim Light and I had to choose amongst 90 volunteers to serve on our committee. We have 9 of the best, smartest architects, historians, different members of the community. I can tell you that this community is engaged. It's been approved by more than one referendum in favor of advancing this project. So happy to answer any other questions, but thanks for hearing me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. You said 36 operations per hour?
Correct, total, that's total operations, between commercial operations and general aviation airplanes.
And my understanding, that might be high compared to where we are right now. We're in the-
For this
And what's the
operation and
definition
stuff,
of an
yeah.
operation?
It's-
Because we have what's called because we have what's called a wrap, airplanes take off, well, some are coming on final, and we have pretty much a one way in, one way out. That's why we're limited to that
So an
capacity.
operation is a landing or a takeoff.
Correct, yeah, so that's our limit per hour, and that's when that's when it's sunny out, when the visibility is not good, so. Any other questions?
I have a question. You were talking about the Gulfstream 650.
Yep,
Is that used in commercial flying?
that's a general aviation airplane.
Yes.
That's it was, actually, they stopped making them. But that can't land here because the wingspan is, the engineers put them out like this, so it's 97 feet, they can't land here. So we can't get the more fuel efficient airplanes here now. I mean, there's only a handful that can't land here now, but that's one of them. There's a couple of Globals. But the main thing is this Airbus 220 really could be a lifesaver. Remember, we had the Bach jet here many years ago, and that carried 110-ish passengers.
Okay.
So we've had, I wouldn't say larger cabin, but higher capacity airplanes here in the past. And that's really what you want. You want the most amount of passengers per airplane to lower your fuel exhaust and pollution. And of course, the newer airplanes always have more efficient engines. That's better for our environment, better for our health and our mental well-being.
I remember asking the representative who came from Delta in Denver here as a part of the, I think it was the Common Ground.
Common ground recommendation process.
When we were meeting up at the high school. And I asked him about future planes and how they would function, how much more efficiently or how much cleaner or how much quieter. And he said, yes, they would be. And I said, give us some numbers. And he said, I don't have those. And I said, well, do you know who has them? And he said, well, I'll have to go back to dinner, I'll have to get back to you. But I never heard back from him.
We looked at those as part of the technical working group and the ASC vision process, and I was on the technical, and we had all the spreadsheets of all the planes. Do we have those handy? Can we get those? We can,
Yeah,
if you want those, we could probably pull them. I know that there were a couple of the Airbuses on there, but we looked at all the noise, we looked at all the fuel consumption, capacity, everything of all the aircraft that could possibly be here. And that's how we ended up with the county's recommendation when we got the approval for the aircraft layout plan. That's how we arrived at the Airbus 220 series airplane as our target aircraft. We just didn't pull that out of a hat, I can assure you. It was thoroughly researched.
So I just did some quick math, 36 flights, operations per hour, 20% of commercial.
Correct, and 80% GA. No, that's roughly correct.
And that's 720 planes, not 776 for some planes. That's, to me, substantial. That's
I'm
just
sorry,
the
say the last part
math.
again?
I got 7 planes that are the Airbuses that carry 120 people each, right? 7 an hour.
Yeah.
But the-
7 in an hour, I don't know how long the turnover is. I couldn't say 7 an hour, does that happen? I don't know. I mean, if you have 4 spaces, I get it, but you also have an hour to get 7 flights in.
But the airlines would theoretically fly less total flights, right? Because you're getting,
Well, they fly less total flights if they're not trying to bring more people in.
okay, well, if you're bringing more people in, I posit to you, where are you gonna put them? Because you're not gonna bring
So
more,
we're-
if you don't have more beds here,
Build more hotels.
right? Are we building more hotels?
I mean,
Well, that's what I'm saying, you have to look at pillow count. It's the first
you
thing.
wanna have Christmas week 40 weeks a year, not 2 weeks a year. That's what I'm saying.
You want to have it or you
No, I'm
don't?
saying, where are we gonna put the people? Well, Christmas week is pretty full, 4th of July is very full, we're at 80-90% occupancy. But what about the other 48 weeks a year? Now what I'm saying is that the growth is not gonna come at Christmas. The growth is gonna come the other 40 weeks whatever, however many weeks we want to say, when we're not at capacity. Even if we don't build more hotels, we're still increasing the visitor count here.
You're not, I would,
Bigger planes that come from the East Coast, or they can fly nonstop, just told me, across the Atlantic.
but you look at your max capacity, which is Christmas week, there are only so many pillows here for people to sleep. So I can make your argument that during off-season, maybe the places would fill up, but you're not increasing your total passenger count because you have to have a place to sleep,
But I don't
or you're not
want
gonna
to
book an airline
experience
ticket here.
Christmas week
What?
in every week between November 1st and March 31st.
Well, and you're just talking about, Aspen, you got Snowmass, you got Down Valley, but let me
Right.
ask you another question, on these other aircraft that can come in, do they have a longer range?
Some of them do, yeah. I mean, they are increasing the range on some of them. I mean, practically, there's only so far they can go. I mean, the 550 can go to Beijing, I mean, but pilots after 13 hours.
The commercial, like the A220 and potentially the A320 that could,
Yeah, I haven't flown that aircraft, so I don't know the exact range and I don't know the exact performance. I'm not sure if they can go from here to New York or not, or if they still have to stop in Denver. Our ERJ, CRJs can do basically 3 hours plus. I mean, Atlanta's a stretch. I've personally been flying the Atlanta route with winds and we've had to stop for fuel. So on the CRJ, ERJ range, it's, 3-ish hours before they're looking for a place to get gas.
so what, that's 1,500 miles or something?
Yeah, roughly, like Atlanta to here is like, Atlanta to here is a stretch. In fact, I think American started with Charlotte, and I think they had to make a fuel stop.
Penalties.
They had to take people off, because you can't take full fuel passengers and everything, so it's not known what the range is because of the hot performance here, what the Airbus will do. That'll be up to the airlines who are flying them.
The airlines fly a lot fewer flights during off-season than they do during Christmas, New Year's. They
Yeah.
gear the number of flights based on the time of year.
Yeah, Denver goes from like 11 down to like maybe 4 or 5 a day, this month, muddy season. So,
And these questions that you're being asked, I expect that you understand. We're having to answer the question of extent,
Right.
intensity. And those questions apply directly to what kind of intensity and
Yeah.
extent are we looking at?
and understand with the terminal, yeah, to answer that, the runway, you're probably not gonna ever see any difference there. And we were talking about shifting the same runway 100 feet wider, that 25 feet aside, you're not gonna see it from the highway. I doubt you even see it from Owl Creek Road that you'll notice a difference. The terminal is gonna be landscaped and set into the environment there with landscaping that I'm gonna argue you probably won't even see a difference from the highway. You'd have to crane your neck. You don't see a terminal now, just because you have mature landscaping. So as far as impacts to our community and extent, I don't think you're gonna see a big difference, maybe no difference at all. I mean, I've seen the
I
plans,
don't think their questions had to do with visual extent.
okay,
Yeah,
but yeah,
I'll see if I can. So obviously, our purview, with this location and extent is like the flight equipment matrix is not really what we're talking about, but we are talking about the cumulative effect. And I think maybe what Doug's getting at is,
a bigger building, in other words.
well, not the
or-
building, but the impact in general,
Bigger
so.
pipe.
So if we're creating, like, I understand the theory, if we can get the larger planes in and they can fit X amount of more people than the CRJ per flight, you're technically can have less flights and get in the same amount of people.
Correct,
But what we're really, and this might be what Doug is asking, what we're doing is we're creating that ability to have that much more capacity. So that if the market dictates, and it's not about just the beds in the hotels at the Little Nell, like Joe said, there's this huge area that's rapidly growing that this airport's serving. So the market is going to fill in that room, and then it basically gives us the ability to get that many more people in and that many more flights in. If those airlines decide that the demand exists during a high period, we've added that much more capacity per flight, and then you times that by how many more flights can get in per day, and then you've basically given the market the ability to, does that sound about right, to basically fill that capacity you've created a bigger pipe, whether you fill the whole thing with water or not.
But just remember, Mr. Chair, you're still limited by number of airplane operations per hour.
Right.
So once the airlines try and, let's say they try and land a 525 and 3 other carriers are already there.
Right.
They're not gonna schedule to leave because what they'll do is either sit in LA and burn gas and wait for an opening, but they don't wanna be late.
Right.
So the airlines, and Bill Tomsich is a much better expert than me on this, they've been very careful to try and separate their arrival and departure times so they're not leaving at the same time. And once you fill up that box of operations per hour, it's done. You can't get off the ground. I mean, if my kids left here on January 3rd, they sat on that runway for an hour before they took off because of flow. You just can't get any more into that, operations per hour number. So that's where you're limited, and respectfully, I'm not
No,
in agreement with that.
So like the information and then how that creeps into the private market.
So Zach, can I just add on to that a little bit? And a lot of the conversation that's happening right now brings me back to a lot of the conversations that we had in 2019 and 2020. And I think in those common ground recommendations, one of the things that you do see is they were very cognizant of these exact issues. And that was that whole FlexGate thing that we're talking about. So when you do have those bigger aircrafts, you're not all of a sudden having this like cruise ship effect of all of this influx of folks. You are still limited by the number of gates, what he mentioned as the number of operations, and then also just like all of that throughput through there. And so right now, are we operating with 8 gates, Diane?
Sorry.
Yeah, 8, yeah. So right now, you're operating with 8 gates. The terminal that's designed right now is designed with just the 7. And those are all very cognizant decisions that were made through those common ground recommendations to try to curb that effect that you're talking about.
Right, and what percentage right now of total Aspen airport traffic is commercial?
It's 20%
Okay,
commercial
so-
and 80%
So
in
the
general
other
aviation.
80% with the FBO expansion and the doubling of the parking at the FBO from, or not doubling, from
No.
60 spots to
They're-
That
225.
Flow rate is gonna stay the same, whether it's commercial or general aviation.
Right,
That what Michael was talking to you about.
Yeah, you gotta remember, when airplanes come in here, the FAA doesn't say, oh, SkyWest, you get to go first, because
Yeah.
you have 70 people.
Right.
The FAA cannot discern or discriminate between commercial aviation and general aviation.
Yeah.
It's kind of whoever gets there first. I mean, they're metering their flow. They may hold an airplane on the ground till there's availability, but they can't discriminate amongst aircraft, much as I'd like to say that the commercial traffic should have priority. That's not the way it works with the FAA. It's an equal opportunity.
On the commercial side, numerically, we have, there's 7 E-175s, 76 people each, that's 532 people. There's only room for 4 of the 220s, and they have 120 people each. So actually, they have 480. So the number of gates can accommodate either 480 people with the 220s or 532 with what we have today. So the bigger planes actually have less people overall.
alright, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Can I ask another question?
Oh.
I don't know if it's for Mike or whomever, but, maybe it's Rye. But currently, so the commercial traffic generally ends around 7 o'clock, right? And
You
then
mean the general aviation traffic? The commercial carriers can land here
The
up,
airport's open until 11.
right, they can land up till 11, but the
Commercial as well as general aviation, or is it?
general aviation, depending on the weather, there's some restrictions about their operations at night.
Right,
that
but let's
approval.
say there's not weather constraint, I'm just trying to figure out if, so it seems like, you if you're flying commercial, you're generally timed out by 7 o'clock, right? Or you can go, you
No,
can go all night.
it's
you can go
total,
until
it's
11
total
o'clock.
hours. If they start at 7 o'clock, they can fly till, depending on how many legs, it's between 11 to 13-hour duty days.
So when does like United or American like shut down for the day?
11.
They go until 11 o'clock at night?
They can land up till 11, they can depart up until 10:30 from this airport.
I see, okay.
Yeah, but as far as cruise, they can go, all night. It's just
Basically,
limited.
Same for general aviation.
General aviation has a little bit more leeway on Part
You can
90,
get out
Part
quicker, you can
91.
land quicker
No, just part, they're regulated under FAA Part 91, so there's really not much in way of duty arrest requirements, you just have to have a fit for duty. But when you get into Part 135 and Part 121, which is commercial carriers, they have more restrictions on duty time for a crew.
So is there some potential that the FAA could say, you know, let's run this airport 24/7?
No, you already have a
Why
local
not?
ordinance that prohibits that.
Is that under the MOS
If I may
or
step
whatever?
in. I'll step in on the 24/7. We
Who has the
protect,
curfew?
we protect our curfew. Now, many airports wish they had that curfew that we have.
Uh-huh.
We will not do anything, and we do everything to protect that. We will not do anything to change that. Because
Can the FAA change it without our, without?
it has been grandfathered in with the Airport Noise and Capacity Act, correct?
So never change as long as Pitkin County.
As long as
decides
we
not
don't
to
do
change it.
anything to initiate that
We being
change.
which part of the we are we?
Pickett County.
Right,
Pitkin County,
and believe me, we are extremely protective of that, to the point that if it is seconds after that curfew, they have been issued
Okay.
curfew violations.
Joe, because there were a group of, strong people who said, no, we cannot continue to do this that late at night, because it involved the mental health and the public health of the community.
And I will say through our noise program too, that we're instituting voluntary, because we can't enforce mandatory, but shoulder hours. That we understand the community wants to sleep after 10. So 10 to 10:30 has now become our quote shoulder hours to let pilots know and people that want to come in, please be sensitive to our communities. If you don't have to fly them, please don't. Choose an earlier time for our community, be a good community
So
partner.
some aircraft like a GA comes in after 11 o'clock, what's?
They are met with our team with a curfew violation, and they know it.
What's the penalty for a curfew violation? Is that money?
The financial penalty is not much for them, but the fact that they got
You
one
know, 5 minutes on your jet fuel or whatever?
is not much, but it's enough to know that they
Is
have
there some
violated
point
it.
if people repeatedly violate that, where they're not allowed to?
Like a 3 strikes you're out.
I have been very fortunate here in the fact that,
Do we have
again,
any
and you'll
customers
speak to
out
this for a pilot, they don't want to violate that curfew.
So the
I mean-
fine for a curfew violation is $1,000 per
$1,000.
occurrence.
Uh-huh.
There is a circumstance where I believe if an operator has more than 3 violations in any given year, they could lose their ability to fly in and out of ASC.
I see.
I would encourage the P&Z to get through as much public comment as
Yeah.
possible
Yeah.
and bring the comment.
I've taken up a lot of time. Thank you.
Anyone else, public comment?
May I have equal time?
Well, Ellen, we're just doing one public comment
I
at a
think
time
it's
right
very
now.
unfair that I tried to keep mine as succinct as possible, and I would like to have point counterpoint, because you were just told some misinformation.
Well,
I
we're
would like
not,
to correct.
we're not doing a
I would
question
like
and
to put it on
answer,
the
it's not
record
an
that
open.
you just heard some misinformation.
I understand, but that gentleman took his, we had time because he was answering questions from the commissioners. So, and is there anyone else who would like to do public comment right now, or Bonnie, do we have
There's
Any
no
public
one
comment
online
online?
raising their hand.
anyone? Okay, alright, I'm gonna close public comment.
Just before you do.
Yeah,
I have this, big heart for people
Yep.
who really want to say something, and I know we can't go on forever.
okay.
But if I asked a question of Ellen, could she answer it?
But Ellen, can we, if I give you 1 minute, will that work, or 2
I would
minutes?
like equal time, frankly, or the ability to have equal time.
No, we're
and I
not,
feel
it's
that's
not
pretty
equal
much-
time, it's, I'm
You're
just
making
gonna,
the rules, but
I'm
I
giving you
would be
two-
happy to answer a question.
but Suzanne asked something, she's right, I'm gonna give you 2 minutes,
May I?
please, and
Thank you.
then that's it.
Do you want me to speak, or do you have a question? I would like to say, first of all, newer airplanes are heavier, the ones that are bigger than 95 feet are heavier. Laws of physics. To get a bigger plane airborne takes more energy. More energy means more fuel. More fuel means more ultrafines. My friend Mike is correct that the Gulfstream 650s are more efficient at 37,000 feet cruising. But when you're asking the engines to go full power, right by Buttermilk, where the kids are skiing, they are vastly more polluting because they're going at full throttle. Please be clear. Also be clear, 75 or 80% of the flight operations are private. They have 1 and 2 people on them. So it's verbal judo to try to talk about, oh, bigger commercial planes will be more efficient. First of all, the commercials have not asked at all to bring in bigger planes. It does not meet their business model. So I don't know why you're talking about the Airbuses. They have not asked. Another thing is, because I got it through Open Records over the holiday season, this past holiday in a 2-week period, for 9 of those days, there were 280 flight operations over Woody Creek and my house. 280. My neighbors are calling me. I've never heard so many. And now we know that the theoretical ultimate is a lot more than that. It's appalling already, and you want to make it more. But please be aware that when you're talking about more flight operations, bigger planes, those are private planes that are poisoning the kids at the ski school much more on the ground. They are not more efficient. Thank you.
All right. Now, I'm gonna close public comment, and then we're gonna have commissioner questions. Any commissioners have any comments or questions for staff or for Rye?
What's for dinner?
I was gonna say, what am I doing here?
Last time we went till like 8:30, so we're doing good so far.
That's good.
Go ahead, Debbie.
Okay, so I went pretty in-depth in the Aspen Area Community Plan. And just kind of came up with a few things that are mentioned in there where this development may not quite be on the up and, be worthy. So the county, and the city and the county currently require any kind of redevelopment to at least partially offset impacts in the community such as, and they listed a whole lot of things, including air quality, noise, affordable housing. And it just seems like some of the impacts here have not been addressed by the county. And it sounds like even though they're addressed in the way that they're measuring and trying to figure out what those impacts are, I haven't really heard much in the way of a plan to mitigate the sound and the air quality mainly. And I would think that just the size of the terminal, it suggests that it will generate at least some extra employees, if nothing else in the janitorial department. But, you know, you can't build something that's 3 times as big without increasing employees. I'm just saying that. I know that was not part of the plan. Well, that will also remain to be figured out after it's built. We won't know. Also, the community plan requests that limit consumption of energy in building materials. So if it's built, I'd like to see the terminal building follow the FBO and putting as many solar panels on the roof as possible. I know I didn't really see that in last week's presentation. And then in the Aspen Area Community Plan with goals under mitigating impacts, it says to study and quantify all impacts that are directly related to all types of development. So conduct a comprehensive review and study all impacts and get results from new development. So that's just my issue is I don't feel like the studies have been done far enough along to see the mitigation.
I looked closer at how the responses to a bunch of the WAMP areas were. on AA is preserve open areas. I asked last week about how much ground is hardscaped now versus how much ground is hardscaped with the new plan. I wasn't able to get an answer for that. But a runway that's 50% bigger, a de-icing area that I don't know how much bigger it is, but it's bigger. More roads, more taxiways, all those areas, there's less open space. I don't see how that can be. So from my perspective, land use, we're not preserving open space, we're covering open space. Then I went to transportation. Transportation's a big issue in town. All I know about the latest group that's working on transportation is they've said carrots are great, but we're gonna have to start using sticks. Building a 3-story parking garage, it's not a stick, it's a carrot to more cars, more rental cars, more traffic driving into town. I understand there's a transportation building and all this verbiage about getting people to use mass transit. If rental cars are easy, people are gonna rent cars. If you're in a 3-story parking garage, more cars, more traffic. So that's part of transportation policy and parking. The density and the WAMP scenic guidelines, density size. The airport is, 2.5 times bigger than it is now. There's a 20-foot tall wall for sound at the FBO. You drive by there now, a 20-foot tall wall is huge. I understand, I saw the renderings, it's screened, it's all those kind of things. And maybe it's really good for sound and particulates and all that kind of stuff. I can't comment on those. But a 20-foot tall concrete wall, which we'll probably see from the Owl Creek side, because it's gonna face Owl Creek. The backside is bermed and trees and all that kind of stuff, but it's a giant concrete wall. I don't know how long it is, but on the drawings, on the maps, it's pretty good size. It goes from the FBO towards the commercial, or the terminal. So there's a giant concrete wall there. I understand it's being screened and burned and everything from the 82 side. I haven't seen pictures from the Owl Creek side. And so we discussed, and I appreciate everybody's belief about the terminal. It sounds like the intention is to make the terminal building modest. And I think that I agree though with Suzanne. We're being asked to trust everybody that they're gonna do modest, and this is our only bite at the apple. In spite of other people's comments that we get another chance, I don't think that anybody gets another chance. The building department, there's no zoning, obviously it has to meet building codes, but as I understand, what's presented is gonna be approved as far as size and all that kind of stuff. And it feels like that we're being pushed to make a quick decision because it's been going on a long time, but we all of a sudden get to the L&E and it's not ready for public consumption. We don't know what these things, we're tasked with representing the community on these issues, and we're just saying, well, everybody told us it was gonna be great, so we're taking their word for it. Those are my comments.
I'll give it a shot. I think that, maybe I'll talk about process. Maybe that's a different approach. I would agree that, we don't really have enough information to determine, compliance or conformance with the master plans based on where the design is at this point. So from a process perspective, what I'm thinking is we wait until we've got that information before we make a decision. I think that, like I said last time, it's, there's a lot of momentum, because it wasn't exactly what I said, but there's a lot of momentum behind what's happening here. I think that although there's different perspectives on FAA funding and so on, that given the bond issue, given the you know, whatever, $800 million cost for this, that, the community probably would be short-sighted to not get the FAA funding, and I don't see any other plan that's viable, although some, you know, groups of, you know, okay, the county should take it over, run their own airport, privatize it, make money off the fuel, use the fuel money to pay for the improvements and so on. I don't think that that's a viable option. But on the other hand, but anyway, so that's why I kind of come back to, I would agree with Suzanne's comments that we don't have enough, you know, enough information to really make a decision. And so, maybe we decide, you know, one option is I'm thinking is maybe we decide, you know, to not make a decision yet. I mean, the one leverage that we do have is that the process won't go forward without a location and extent approval, or deny, one way or the other. So if we deny it, it'll go to the BOCC, and the BOCC, if I was a gambling man, would be that the BOCC would overrule P&Z. So, you know, the other option that I've been thinking about, because this is super difficult stuff, this is gonna impact our community for decades going forward. The airport has always been a controversial issue, for, you know, whatever, decades as well. And, there are a lot of impacts. I've read the reports, the, you know, Woody Creek Caucus, position and so on. And we don't have, you know, the monitoring. I have questions regarding, you know, where is noise measured? Is noise measured just at the airport? Is noise measured out in Woody Creek? Is noise measured in Brush Creek? You know, what are those impacts? And so the other thought I had was maybe we need to have, you know, a joint meeting with the BOCC and, you know, kind of have a little bit better idea of where they're going before we just decide to say yes or no. So, if I was asked today, okay, you gotta make a decision today, I'd probably come down on, I don't think it's consistent with a number of the policies in the AACP. You know, some of those policies, you know, talk about limiting growth, you know, maintaining Aspen's small-scale community, maintaining its character, and so on and so forth. It's hard to say. If we got, you know, like the analogy was, a bigger pipe coming in, you know, coming into our community, is that gonna be good or is that gonna be bad? I see arguments on both sides, but at this point, I'm not swayed that this is in conformance with the master plan. You could probably go through a number of other things like the environmental provisions of the Aspen Area Community Plan, i.e. what I'm talking about is the master plan. And this is our, you know, P&Z is just one shot at it. So do we, you know, just decide, hey, let's get together with the BOCC and talk about this? The last meeting, we were talking about trying to break out the components of it between what I see as the main three components being the, you know, the air side, the terminal, and the FBO. I think that, you know, just looking through some of this stuff I'm not completely up to speed on what the common ground comments are now. I thought that they, in fact, were talking about, you know, something like doubling the size of the terminal from, I think it's around 45,000 square feet in terms of the actual terminal, and then the accessory stuff maybe pushes it up to the 70 or 80,000. But I did see some information that, you know, originally they were talking about 75,000 to 90,000 square feet. So, that's kind of where I'm at. It's a difficult, it's a difficult decision to make, I'll say that. Because I do recognize that, you know, we wanna have an airport, but I'm not sure how, you know, do we wanna have the ability for people to fly here from every city in the country? Or, you know, are we gonna be a little more exclusive and, a little harder to get to? And, you know, people will still come. So, those comments may be kind of all over the board, but where I'm at right now is I think I guess my preferred path is we wait till the plans are more fully developed to make a decision, and or we, you know, have a joint meeting with the VOCC.
My hesitancy about meeting with the VOCC is becoming co-opted without realizing it. At this point, I think that the fact that location and extent, that kind of review is put to us, we should not move out from that. This is the question. And a major concern that I have, and for me, this is a threshold concern, is that we do right by the community, and that we actually base this on what is truly applicable. And I don't think that we should be basing a decision as big, as massive as this, on a master plan, a comprehensive plan that was written in 2012. Especially when we have, you know, got it right here. I mean, we were set to approve this a couple of weeks ago, and only because we had a question about one small item about development outside of the UGB, the building, the UGB, did we decide to put off the decision on the comprehensive plan. The Board of County Commissioners appointed they had a choice of 96 people who applied to help make comments on growth that would lead to the comprehensive plan. Those people worked harder than I've ever seen any citizen group here work. They went months past their deadline because they were trying to really cover the ground and cover it well. If I went as a representative from this group, as did Joe and did Chelsea, to attend those meetings as an observer, called a resource person, I could only ask clarifying questions. I could not state my opinion. I could not vote. But I saw what all of those people went through, and they deserve for us to be asking a question as big as this by using this master plan, this comprehensive plan. And so that is another reason, along with the reasons that you suggested, that we talk about possibly tabling our vote on this until we get more information from the Environmental Health Department, from the surveys that the monitoring that you're already doing, until I am more convinced that for instance, the Woody Creek, so their comments on this was, given the severity and reach of this exposure, Pitkin County must prioritize our residents' health by directly measuring, not merely modeling, the presence and concentration of nanoparticles, both at the airport and throughout any area identified as impacted. Public health decisions should be grounded in real-world monitoring that accurately reflects community exposure. that was from Woody Creek. Brush Creek, in their master plan, state that they support the continued safe, reliable, and efficient air service at the Pitkin County Airport while ensuring that existing and future aircraft operations do not adversely affect the quality of life within the Brush Creek planning area. I don't think that we can guarantee that with what we have in front of us right now. The Woody Creek in a letter to us, mentioned additional concerns arise regarding noise, environmental impacts, and public transparency. The Valley has long recognized a 55 decibel community noise expectation, yet the airport is being redesigned to accommodate larger aircraft that may produce broader noise footprints, particularly in a narrow mountain valley where acoustics amplify sound. That has to do, of course, with location. We're not talking about if we're doing this in Eagle or if we're doing it in Rifle. We're talking about doing it in this narrow valley with our particular constraints. Woody Creek also says the proposal also lacks clear commitments to measure ultrafine particle pollution from jet emissions in communities directly beneath the flight path, such as Woody Creek, relying instead on modeled estimates of larger particulates rather than direct monitoring. These issues raise fundamental questions that remain unresolved: why a 150-foot runway is necessary to maintain existing air service, how compliance with the 55 decibel community noise standard will be ensured, and where, not that we get past it and then we say, oh, sorry, you know, I didn't mean to put this much perfume on today, you know, but it's too late then. Modernizing the airport for safety and efficiency may be reasonable, but expanding its operational capability and the environmental and community impacts that follow requires careful scrutiny and clear answers before moving forward. What I find, I must admit, is that we hear from the same characters again and again and again when it comes to the airport and air quality. Air quality since the 80s, I served on at that point there was a joint city-county air quality review board. And I served on that for a few years, and in those years we were dealing with the smoking issue, but before that we were dealing with particulates from dirty burning fireplaces and wood stoves. And at the time, we drew national attention for that. The lobbyists for the smoking industry and the lobbyists for the wood stove industry traveled here to tell us why we should not be putting any sort of limits on them, and that there were no other choices, that we couldn't buy anything that was any cleaner. Well, we took that into account and still said, this community insists on air quality. At that point, we could look outside on some mornings and you could not see across the valley in town because of our particular natural characteristics, geographical characteristics. As soon as we, as a community, put our foot down and said, no, we cannot afford this. We cannot afford these costs to our health. We cannot afford these levels of asthma in our children. As soon as we said no more, of course, the wood stove industry came through with cleaner burning models that we could use. But we had to finally say enough. I mean, for us, enough. Doesn't mean it's enough for Eagle or for Kansas City, but for us, it's enough. I find over time that because the same people from Brush Creek and the same people from Woody Creek come in making their pleas, that it can be easy sometimes to become a little deaf to that, at least not fully sensitive to it. But but we cannot allow ourselves to do that. I won't be a person to allow that. I won't vote for anything that, we're not sure is clean enough for us and is suitable for here. Added to that, when I see that the referral comment from the Environmental Health Department is, as I read to you a bit ago, that having to do with location and extent, being asked the question, what does the Environmental Health Department have to say about this? When they say this is a fast-moving project with a number of moving parts and unknown information, what am I supposed to do with that? It tells me it might be over my budget. You know, this might be something I might want it, and a lot of other people might want it, but we're all, the problem with being a grown-up is knowing that if you want it, sometimes you can't have it. You cannot afford it in a number of ways. So until those, for me, the environmental question and the question of what is the applicable plan, the comprehensive plan, those are two big questions for me. And it would make me vote for tabling it, because I think you're right. If we say no, I think we're saying no prematurely, and then it goes on to the Board of County Commissioners, and they can pay attention to it or not. And they are the ones under the gun on this, because they're the ones that have been spending money on it. And I don't want to be put in that spot of, that's not for me. That's not a budget that I have to deal with. I'd rather have this question answered more purely with I'd rather answer the question that we're being asked, and not be possibly seduced by other pressures.
Joe Mason.
Based on my research, my opinion is that tabling this or maybe rejecting it on the basis of incomplete information is in alignment with what the FAA would ask of us as a planning and zoning commission. The FAA seems to have some expectations of land use compatibility, which I understand are at the core of what we do here. And that it's incumbent upon us to look at that compatibility, and to do so, we need firm plans of what's going on to be able to look at that. And I'd like to read a couple of passages, for instance, from the FAA's advisory circular number 150/5190-4B from September 2022, which says, this advisory circular is intended to help a broad audience understand the effects of land use on the safety and utility of airport operations, and identify compatible land use development tools, resources, and techniques to protect surrounding communities from adverse effects associated with airport operations. This AC, advisory circular, describes major incompatible land uses that conflict with or are impacted by operations at local public use airports. These include residential use within airport noise contours, airspace obstructions and hazards to safe navigation to and from the airport, such as tall structures, light, glare, electronic, radio, smoke, steam, or other atmospheric interference emanating from nearby land uses. Land uses that attract birds and other wildlife hazards to the airport and its immediate environs, which makes me wonder, okay, there's open space at the end of the runway, but is that really conserved open space for wildlife like we typically think of, or is it something different? And development land uses with concentrations of people or property within airport runway protection zones. Airport compatible land uses are defined as those uses that can coexist with a nearby airport without constraining the safe and efficient operation of the airport or exposing people living or working nearby to potential negative environmental or safety impacts. That seems to be exactly what we're dealing with here, but there's even a greater import. Going to PDF page 5 of this document, which is page 1-1. The FAA encourages and assists local airport sponsors and their community land use planning authorities with undertaking their best efforts to secure compatible land use development and planning within the airport environs. Airports that accept federal money through the Airport Improvement Program must comply with all FAA grant assurances. These include, but are not limited to, assurances 19 regarding operation and maintenance, 20 regarding hazard removal and mitigation, and 21 compatible land use. So it appears the grants we're accepting are conditional upon our opinion of compatible land use. This is a really important decision we're making that the federal government is relying upon in part, and we should be careful in making this decision, because by this decision we are saying that there's a compatible land use and that we're okay with this for grant purposes. These assurances are based on statutory requirements. Because these assurances require airports to take appropriate and reasonable actions to promote and maintain airport land use compatibility, the FAA is publishing this advisory circular to provide guidance to airports and other stakeholders on how to accomplish these actions. So this is a really big deal. I'd like to read one more short passage, and this is from 2019. It predates an FAA advisory circular. But this is from a publication entitled Guidebook on Effective Land Use Compatibility Planning Strategies for General Aviation Airports. It's from 2019, and 4 of the 6 co-authors are from Mead and Hunt. So there are people on the team that, or at least people associated with firms on the team, that should be aware of these land use considerations. On page 11 of this, in a section entitled Why is Airport Land Use Compatibility Important? It says in part, effective airport land use compatibility planning is essential for the protection of general aviation airport, GA. Lack of advanced planning can lead to creation of incompatible development for which remedial actions can be far more difficult and costly than adoption and implementation of measures to prevent such development in the first place. Airport operations may be perceived to generate negative impacts on nearby communities, especially when there are incompatible land uses. Incompatible land uses can lead to a politically contentious relationship between an airport and nearby communities, resulting in complaints and demands for restrictions on airport operations. These circumstances ultimately threaten the airport's ability to operate efficiently and serve its function in the local and regional community and economy, which I do want the airport to be able to be, and it seems like we're in the middle of this right now. Lastly, local planners, and this restates exactly what I said, local planners are the first line of defense, and that they can advise applicants of potential airport land use compatibility conflicts and alert an airport sponsor of land use proposals around the airport. In addition, the planning staff is responsible for making recommendations to local decision makers regarding land use proposals. Therefore, it's vital that local planning professionals be educated about the importance of compatible land use planning around airports and understand the significance of coordinating with and obtaining input from an airport manager responsible. In our roles, we can't do any of this right now without greater detail on what's planned. We really need to know not just the terminal size, that's a big part of it, not just the gates, although that's a big part of it, but also the impacts on the communities affecting in the operation zone, the takeoff and landing areas, basically out in Woody Creek, in Brush Creek, and how these areas are affected so that we can think of whether land use in general is compatible or incompatible with the location and extent of this planned airport, but we need greater specificity.
Yeah, you know, as a board, I try to keep coming back to what falls under our purview as planning and zoning board and in a location and extent review, and there's so many things we talked about tonight that are questions for another board, whether that's BOCC or whoever that is, but there are some things that keep coming up, and I mean, what we're asked to approve tonight is a location and extent, and we have the location and we need to conformance of extent, and our code requires us to evaluate extent. If the size, mass, and visual impact are still variable, how can we understand, or how can we make a definitive finding of conformance of that? And I'm not sure how we got this far down the road and we got here without being able to tell us exactly how many square feet this is gonna be, or how many stories, or is there gonna be a jet bridge or not a jet bridge, so we can make a real quality decision on whether the extent of that project falls under compliance or non-conformance with WOM and with the Aspen Area Community Plan. I keep going back to a lot of these questions I have, like, WOMP identifies a 20-acre parcel as an unobstructed visual buffer. And how does placing a rental car operation, infrastructure, all the other things that we're talking about on this site, even if they're temporary, conform to that requirement? And then you get into the definition of temporary. Because some of that stuff they define as temporary might be there for 5, 7 years, who knows, but I can't come up with a definition, I can't come up with a finding of whether this is in compliance and whether this is in conformance without a better idea of the size and scale and intensity of the extent. So we kind of got to this point with a lot of the information that we need is not here for us. So we're asked to be making a decision about something where we don't have all the information we need. It's that simple. Yeah. Go ahead.
Can I just read one more? This is just from the Aspen Area Community Plan, page 26. Mitigating impacts, 7.1. Study and quantify all impacts that are directly related to all types of development. And then specifically to the airport, improve efficiency and reliability of airport services while reducing environmental impacts. Reduce negative impacts of airport operations on surrounding areas. And then, really important, ensure that enough clear and understandable data is gathered and compiled for the purpose of well-informed public decision-making. That's directly from the AEC.
Yeah, I'm sort of the same thing. If WOMP addresses an overall character of the corridor, how can we evaluate the project and the elements of that corridor in total, right? Without, you know, each element, if you looked at each element individually, but we need to look at all the elements together and then decide whether we're, you know, like what I said earlier, some of this is modernization and all this, if you looked at each element individually, it'd be modernization, but then if you look at it in total and the mass of it, which we don't really know, what is that? Are we just modernizing it, or are we, you know, doing an expansion project? Which then comes back to the language that we're, you know, tasked with as a commission, to find that if the project increases the visual dominance, reduces open space along the corridor, how does the project, you know, is it in conformance or non-conformance with those documents?
Let me bring up one other thing, I guess, if we, put this on hold, continue it, whatever. whatever the procedure might be. Keep in mind that in one of the original slides, we still don't have, and I'd be curious what the commissioners think, what's happening on the west side. Right, because the west side's gonna be the second FBO. That's what the FAA wants in the long run, is to have competition between the FBOs. And so are we also looking for, some information on that? Or is this gonna be kind of a two-step, process where that comes back in the future at some point? But, you know, I mean, ultimately, there's gonna be taxiway on that side. There's gonna be parking on that side, and there's gonna be an FBO on the west side.
I saw a lot of head shaking from over there,
Right.
so. I
There
know
won't be
that
another
we're not tasked with evaluating that west side thing because it hasn't, no decision has been made on what will happen with that, but there is discussions on what could possibly happen with that. That's not part of our
It's not part of the
location and
application,
extent
so-
application, but how can we evaluate the full comprehensive, of the extent without a full understanding of what the total build out looks like at mass and scale.
And if it was approved, if we said yes now, despite everything that we're concerned about, then it seems that we would be put in a really bad spot when you come back, the county comes back and says, oh, well, we mentioned that to you, the FBO side, but we weren't asking for a location and extent, but we can't look away from it. We know it's gonna come. And I don't think we should back ourselves into that kind of, I mean, this is a bad enough corner to be in, but that's a worse corner. You know, that's a corner with another dragon beside you or such.
When we can't ask the applicant, if no one knows what's being done with that property, or if anything is being done with that, then we just have to concern ourselves with what's in front of us here, because it would be nice to see the whole thing all together, obviously. But,
Not nice or vital.
well, if they don't know what they're gonna do with it, then how can, it be part of the application, right? So obviously, we'd like to have that, but I think we've seen enough on what we just have right now. With the size and scale of the structures and the intensity and the visual presence within the protected corridor, like to not have any, mock-ups or design or scale, or maybe there's jet bridges, maybe there's not jet bridges. Maybe it's 140,000 square feet, maybe it's 90,000 square feet. Maybe we'll try real hard to, make it conform with the county values, and I don't know if I would hate to say, all right, and hope for the best, and then have there be a 3-story, 140,000 square foot jet bridge deal that you can see from, Artemis.
I think one thing I would say, I'd be interested to hear a little bit on the process for Eleni from Rye. I think all of your comments are good comments, some germane to this, sort of what your specific task is, and some are kind of qualitative on, generally things that you see as issues maybe with redeveloping an airport. As it relates to the application, I think what you have in front of you is the extent of what you might see. So I think you perhaps have to consider a range. If you have 140,000 square foot in there as sort of that top end, our approval from the FAA only allows that much development on the entire site anyways. I think we want to encourage you to provide that comment. I think from a timing standpoint, we are asking you to make a decision, and produce, some comment, you know, that the BOCC can ultimately work from if you choose not to approve it. But I think you have to take what's in that application today as far as scale and mass, and then assume that that's what it could be. And if you disagree with that, then you can put that into the resolution as far as you disagree with it, you think it needs to come down in size or scale. If you have a specific number, that you could compare it to, you could certainly put that in there, or you could just make that general statement.
We could ask for an airport master plan on this, which would include the other airport on the other side.
Yeah, and there is, as far as the
Which is
FAA is
common
concerned,
in the FAA.
you know, there's an approved airport layout plan. So I think, when that happens, there are considerations for a number of these circulars and things that, you had gone through. So, I think as far as the FAA is concerned, we're compliant with their rules and regulations. So now it just comes back to what you all interpret as far as the current master plans. So,
You were just stating that you thought that some of the things or many of the things that we have concerns about are germane to this. Which parts?
that's for you, that's the trick tonight, right? I think, I heard
No,
you guys
no,
go around the,
Let me just
oh, okay, I'm
see if
sorry.
I can clear that up. Which parts of our concerns do you think are not germane?
Oh, well, I think as far as, you can make a statement on air quality. For example, I keep hearing that come up. We're compliant, or what we're testing today has sort of the FAA standards that are adopted. So we're actually able to understand where the limit is on that. As far as the nanoparticles that you've described, we don't have the data for that today, and that's certainly a step that the AAB could make a recommendation to start testing for, but the FAA doesn't have that threshold. So you can only do so much mitigation, that's because ultimately what drives that are the airplanes, right? And so as airplanes get cleaned up over time, I think that is one of the mitigation strategies, is to have cleaner aircraft. We can certainly do some things on site that can help with that, but we can't completely solve it. We heard also earlier about the type of fuel we use. Well, we have that in Atlantic's lease, that they have to use the allowable amount of that type of fuel in the airplane. And so I think we're taking all those right steps, but as far as what the WOMP says, it doesn't distinguish between nanoparticles and the particles that are currently regulated by the FAA. So I think you could make that general statement of continuing to address air quality. And that may be part of the reason that you recommend a denial, is because you want to see that in place. But that would mean, those standards from the FAA are gonna be a ways down the line, and they're not gonna come within any short time frame that is concurrent with what we're trying to do with this development.
I think that what we are wrestling with and what we are supposed to wrestle with is not what the FAA wants. I mean, of course, we have to fall within those standards, but what this unique community can tolerate, environmentally, health-wise, noise-wise, and it's sort of, we can't use it like a dartboard game. We think it's gonna be right there. We bet that it's gonna be right over here. But I think every one of us has said, how can I answer the question of, is this the location? Is this the extent to which this location can be used if I don't know what is gonna be on there?
Well, I think you know that we have an active airport today. And the design that we're getting based on the common ground recommendations actually reduces the number of gates. So I think the intent is that we're not growing out of sync with what the community's desires are. And so we would have an active airport after a redevelopment, but I'd argue that it's an active airport that has all the latest technology available as far as the building goes, as far as sound mitigation, as far as, you know, perhaps some of the attenuation for the air quality. So I think that's what we're trying to get to. And we won't have all the answers. We won't get to a point where we have the answers in a reasonable timeframe about what nanoparticles are, where they're going, how to test them, how to attenuate them, until the federal government comes up with ways to test them and attenuate them and starts putting controls on the aviation community. But
I would argue that we have all the time we want, that we do still have choices that can be made, that have to do with, is that the right location? Is that, can we vote, what extent of use is appropriate there? Looking at all of our unique and peculiar ways here, geography and all of that. I can see that the answer far in the future, or maybe it's now, could be, we need to start thinking more regionally. Maybe this is not, that's the location for the airport now, and maybe that location, it was certainly working well when I moved here almost 50 years ago, but something has happened that has been putting pressures on that so that it doesn't work well for us anymore. Should we rebuild it in the same location? Or should we be thinking regionally, like this government is thinking more and more? Should we be thinking that an airport that serves this community should be, if it's only gonna serve this community, should be small, clean, appropriately sized? Or if we can't have what we want right here, then we can start considering as a community, where should it be? Is Eagle a wider valley? Is Rifle a wider valley? But we're not being tasked with what place might work.
And I think
We're being, excuse me, we are being asked, is this location and this extent that you know about, is it appropriate here and now? And I'm concerned in terms of health and environmental health specifically.
And we're gonna ask you to provide that feedback for us, but to also make a decision or a recommendation on this moving forward tonight. And it sounds like you still have some issues with that. We're not considering at this time moving the airport to a different location. We have a whole lot of community input that has led us to today. Again, we have 3 votes that we heard from the community to continue moving forward with the airport. And we have those common ground recommendations that outlined sort of those parameters. I understand that we also have these master plans that perhaps add additional information, but I think what we're not asking for is to relitigate, do we widen the runway, do we put it in a different location? Those community conversations have happened, and that is why the Board of County Commissioners put the wheels in motion to start a design to approve an airport layout plan ultimately. So the question in front of you is, you know, we have these three sort of discrete projects. Do they comply with the master plan in your view? If they don't, then please let us know where so that so that we can take that ultimately to the Board of County Commissioners. I think they will take a lot of what they're hearing into consideration, most certainly. But I also think, when I asked Rye about process, there's a window in time that you all have to review this and then make a decision one way or the other. So I think that's what kind of, I'm not trying to debate the merits of what your thoughts are. I think they're all good thoughts. It's just, you know, I think we have a process, we put it in front of you. I understand that it's a difficult decision for a variety of reasons. In part because we don't have the final design on the terminal. But with that, I'll stop and just ask if you can talk about it.
There's been lots and lots of comment from your side about all the community outreach. The community outreach says 75 to 90,000 square foot terminal. You just said a minute ago, that you're asking us to approve up to 140,000 square foot terminal. We have to agree with, that's what you're asking us. The community has said 75 to 90, as I understand from all the stuff that the common ground and all that. But you just asked me to approve 140,000 square feet. That's not what the community has asked for, as I understand. And that's directly from you, what you just said.
So I think
I
that
don't
would
want-
potentially be a basis for denying the application.
Yeah.
I do wanna provide some timing and procedural perspective here so that the board can think about that as it moving forward. You can continue the application, review of the application if you want. Your time frame for doing that is not indefinite. State law requires the Planning and Zoning Commission to act on the application within 30 days of the date of official submission to the commission. I interpret that to have commenced on April 7th. So if you have some additional basis to continue, and you can articulate what additional information you need from either the consultants or county staff or the community development department, then I would encourage you to articulate what those are that are holding you up from deciding whether you can apply what's in the application to what is in the applicable master plans. If, to Doug's point, the submission of a 140,000 square foot terminal or 128,000 square foot terminal is antithetical to those plans and not in conformance with what you all think those plans are asking or requiring or recommending, and that could form a basis of finding non-conformance. Similarly, if you think the environmental impacts from what is being proposed are antithetical to the LWAMP or the Aspen Area Community Plan, that too could form a basis for a finding of non-conformance with those plans. So if you need some additional information and you need some additional time, you have it, but it is not an indefinite amount of time. So I would encourage the board to articulate for staff what additional information you may need to reach a decision on the particular application that's in front of you right now.
And what did you say the deadline would be?
30 days from April 7th.
So, yeah, I wanna respond, cause asking us to vote on the extent of what we might see or what we could see is not the same thing that the code requires of us to make this decision. The code clearly states location and extent of a project. The definition in the code 230-30, section 9, it says extent, the definition of extent is size, scale, intensity, physical build out, and visual impact. So if we're asked to vote on what it might be or what it could be, it's ignoring all those aspects of extent. And then I just want to address one other thing, I know that we've discussed a lot of things here that aren't germane to the decision that we have to make tonight, and that aren't under our purview or our onus. And so there are a lot of things like FAA standards, microparticulates, the need for a bigger airport, the economics of a bigger airport, the flight equipment matrix that I understand and I don't think are under my purview as a member of this board. This is not what I'm making these decisions on, so I just don't want that to like muddy the waters. That it's a big decision, and I wanna have clarity that the things that are under our purview as a board that we're evaluating for location and extent, character, size, scale, intensity, visual and cumulative impact of the whole project. And we really haven't seen what that is. So we're being put in a position, we're asked to be voting on something that we don't really have all the information.
So, right?
Yeah.
Was the application deemed complete by?
Community Development Department deemed the application complete. The only other context I wanted to add when I was making my point before is that the board submitting, in this case, the BOCC submitting the application to you has the ability to provide some additional time to the Planning and Zoning Commission if it deems that it is appropriate. So there is a mechanism within the law for the BOCC to potentially provide you more than that 30 days, but to your direct question, yes, the application was deemed complete by the Community Development Department when it came in the door.
We started 30-day window.
I interpret the 30-day window to start when it was submitted to you on April 7th.
Our first meeting.
Our first meeting.
Is that deemed completion an indication that there's adequate specificity of the elements that we've been talking about?
According to the Community Development Director, yes.
So Ryan, would I be correct? As a board right now, we have a decision. We have three different options basically. Approve, deny, or table this and request for more information.
I think that's generally correct.
Yeah.
A component of a continuance or tabling, as you referred to it, could potentially be communicating to the BOCC that you need some additional time to review the application. But again, I think you would want to be specific with respect to what additional information that you believe you need in order to render a decision one way or the other regarding conformance with the applicable master plans. So if it's because the application does not have enough specificity regarding the square footage that is being proposed for the terminal, then I would articulate that as a reason why you do not believe that there's enough information in the current application. And that too could be a basis upon which you provide feedback to staff to say, please identify with specificity exactly how many square feet you are requesting be a component of the approval today. What I heard from Mr. Cuniff was that the current design is 128,000 square feet approximately. But if you need more specificity on that point, then I would look to staff and our consulting group to put that information on the record for you. So that as you consider whether that is out of character with either the LOMP or the Aspen Area Community Plan, you have that information to base your decision on. Similarly, if you're concerned about height or something like that, it may be incumbent to ask staff or the consultant group or the Community Development Department exactly what it is or are the height or heights of the structures that are being proposed. That too could be a basis to continue and request additional information from these folks that are right here, and or ask for some more time from the BOCC. Now you could ask for more time from the BOCC and you may not get it. So you may, if you are going to continue, you may want to schedule your next continuance within a time frame that you can make that decision within 30 days from April 7th in case you're forced into that position. So those are some things to think about going forward, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions about that.
So I'd ask the board, do we need more time? Do we need more information? Do we need both? Do we need less time?
We need information, they need time.
Yeah.
That's the reality, but I need more information. They need time to produce it, it seems to me.
Yeah, we won't, within the time frame of the 30 days.
Yeah.
If we're operating that, be able to come back with specific information on, we could tell you the square footage we're working from and the height. But as far as renderings and those kind of things, they're just not gonna be ready, and we're talking, maybe, 60 days out or longer, so I think that's the challenge.
If you can't get the board the information we need within our timeline, then
Does the county commissioner, the VOCC have the ability to just say, you guys didn't get it done, we're gonna make a decision?
If you don't make a decision within 30 days, yes. What the VOCC does have is the ability to grant you some additional time to review the application. And I'd be happy to be the vessel to bring that request back to them if you would like.
So maybe that comes back to my joint request for a joint meeting with the VOCC within this 30-day period of time.
And the purpose of that would be,
So I guess express more clearly to them, rather than saying here at this, meeting or whatever, this is what we don't like. The option, maybe. And, yeah, if we're kind of stuck with the 30-day limit. That's the other option, I don't know, we could go back through what we talked about tonight, or whatever we talk about, and have another, continue this for a week and have another, session where we give them a little more specifics. I think that, what we're struggling with now is, what is the terminal gonna look like? What's the size of the terminal gonna be? What's the height of the terminal? Cause we've heard, some different things. And the problem is it's in schematic design. So, I think that, I don't know, but we're at a difficult spot, because if we deny it, then we'll just go to the OCC, and my gut would be that they'd say, well, thanks, but we're approving it.
I think that the VOCC would very much appreciate understanding where those pressure points are for you all. I don't think they're interested in not taking advice from you all. I think they do want to understand that interpretation. So I think that would be helpful.
Maybe easier to, to have a back and forth in a joint session. Maybe it's easier for whatever, maybe to jot down notes from this, or send them the transcript, the last 8 hours, something like that.
or make writing.
I'm gonna need more than a month to type that out.
I'm not really, hard and fast that, we ought to do a joint session, but I think that, I think there's more give and take. People can, whatever, react and exchange views and so on. Or our decision would be, could be, it's already whatever, 7:30 almost, whatever, 7:15. Have another session just with P and Z and plan to come back with our, what specifically we want to pass on to VOCC as our concerns.
I lean toward that more than,
I don't know what their schedule is, they may not, they may not have time on their agenda to sit down and talk about, what P and Z thinks.
I lean, what I'm saying that I was leaning toward was your suggestion that each of us get more specific, narrow our specific concerns down to individual lists, and then come back whenever we need to come back and discuss those. I can't imagine myself trying to talk any of you out of a specific concern that you have. I can imagine myself agreeing with it or not, bolstering it or not, but I am really hesitant to sort of water down the effect of a location and extent review by discussing it with the applicant. I can see asking for more information
I mean, you consider
specifically.
the VOCC the applicant.
Yes, they
County,
are.
they are.
Yeah, they are.
So would a motion for that look like a separate P and Z work session to just refine
Yes,
the
vastly
scope and
refine.
scale of our questions or concerns about this application to give to the VOCC? Does that sound about right? So it would just be a work session or a meeting.
it wouldn't be another public
It wouldn't be
hearing.
another public hearing. I don't know, right, with that.
Well, I think you need to take some action tonight to keep the application
Yeah.
alive essentially,
Does
through a
action,
continuance of some kind.
does tabling mean action?
A tabling and
Continuance, probably not a
continuance are the
table.
same thing, essentially. So you'd be, you need to continue today, if you're going to continue, for the reasons articulated, so that you can either form a denial or a finding of non-conformance that articulates with specificity the reasons that it does not conform with the master plans in front of you today, or to the extent you extend that to other master plans. You would need to define when that date is. And I think you need to do that within 30 days from April 7th. In the meantime, I certainly can find some time to communicate to the BOCC that you all may want some additional time to review the application. But I would need to hear that as a component of a potential motion from you all. But as I mentioned before, I would suggest that you continue it to a date that provides you with the opportunity to continue your review and render a decision before the 30-day window expires. Because once it expires, state law deems the application approved. So, in that circumstance, the BOCC would not even necessarily have to take an additional step. The project could move to building permitting. So, we can float some additional, the available dates within that time frame that are available now are April 28th and May 5. So those are within the 30 days. Next week, you have a location and extent review application for the Phillips property. So that date is not currently available. So those are the other dates that you have.
So 2 weeks,
May
or
5.
off
Yeah,
week.
May 5 has a current GMQS application on it that we can potentially move out to accommodate.
Well, the private applicants don't get this 30-day deal?
They don't. The 30-day shot clock on the application is to avoid the planning commission continuing to just continue and continue and continue and continue.
Rye, can I ask a question?
Sure.
On procedure is, as far as these sort of discrete projects that are part of the application, is it possible to sort of, if they so desired, give some type of approval on a component of it? Like, in other words, the runway is set, and that can be, that component of it can be approved versus needing more information for other pieces of it.
Sure, suppose that the P and Z could find certain aspects of the application in conformance with the applicable plans and make that finding. And to the extent those components of the project are not integral to other portions of the project, potentially move forward on that basis. I need to understand more what that looked like, but I suppose there is a path forward to, as I'll call it, silo different aspects of the project.
I think the runway is the most timely because of the work need to be done this summer and timing for pulling permits and that kind of thing.
And it may be that, you know, in other circumstances similar to this, the deciding body, in this case, the planning commission, has provided the applicant, in this case, the county or the BOCC, the opportunity to modify or withdraw a portion of their application that the deciding body finds undesirable or antithetical. So I suppose there's a world where the BOCC were to say, or the county, well, we're not far enough along in one aspect of the project, but we believe this aspect of the project could be reviewed, so we're gonna modify the application to withdraw a portion of that, what's currently in front of the board. So there's a world where I think we could get to what you're talking about.
Let me ask you a different question, I guess.
Sure.
You raised something. So, location as an extent applies to governments, right?
Yes,
So are all talk about the three components of this,
yes,
the runway, right,
Yes.
clearly government, terminal, the government,
yes.
FBO,
The FBO was subsumed under the location and extent review process because the FBO is the county's lessee on the property. So any development of
so is
that
the
area,
county actually the applicant on
uh,
the FBO?
yes, technically the county is the
It's kind of
applicant,
standing in the place of its tenant, essentially.
yes. And you've seen similar applications like that at the P and Z. I think the most recent one I can think of right now is the Cozy Point application where the city of Aspen was officially the applicant, but its tenants were proposing
Got it,
aspects
yeah.
of the design out there.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the flow there.
Good clarification.
To me, the runway is an integral part of the extent. I think the most useful conversation
Well, I
here
think,
today
I
was,
mean, should we consider a motion, continue this until 28th? What's
I think
everybody's calendars?
the county has time pressure. And, we'd encourage them to change their application if they really wanna do, the runway sooner. And that's what I would encourage. I mean, I'm not suggesting that we're gonna approve it, but it gives them a shot. It seems to me it gives them a lot better shot if they break the pieces off and redo their application, because there's big problems, it appears to me. The size of the airport, and all of the, the parking garage is an issue for me, terminal's an issue for me, the runway's an issue for me, but their only hope to me to get a partial approval is to break it up.
If they break it up, what part of what you just described would be assigned the burden of air quality?
Probably the airport, probably the runway, right, as opposed to the terminal.
Yeah,
The air quality
I'd
is,
hesitate
a
to
function of the
start.
number of aircraft that are coming in.
I think that would lead us to come up with arguing what belongs to what.
I don't think it probably doesn't make sense to break it down. I mean, I just.
I think it would add time.
I don't think it makes makes sense.
So many of these aspects in a design, for design and work in concert, so.
Yeah,
The width and the length of the runway directly affect the airport parking and the de-icing tarmac. And the width and the length of the runway directly affect the taxiway and the airport parking. And that pushes into the envelope of the building envelope of where the airport's gonna be,
I
right?
think it's all.
And
I'm glad
the
everyone-
scale and the size of the airport affect how big the de-icing tarmac is, or how big the, and it all, like, you
Oh,
to
right, yeah.
start picking it apart, and then we lose the whole point of what a location and extent review is, which is to review the size and the scale and the impact of this project all in concert together.
Well, back to the motion or whatever
Yeah.
that may come up tonight. I'd rather try and do it on the 28th, because then at least we still potentially have another day.
Yeah.
Right, depending on what happens on the 28th. If we push it to the 5th, we're like, you know, whatever, right at the edge. Of the 38th.
So Joe, do you wanna make a motion for a continuance to the 28th?
Yes, yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we continue this until the 28th.
I think that we should include in that motion, Rye's comment, he talks to BOCC, if we're looking for additional information that the applicant needs to, the applicant needs time to give us. I think that's an important piece, right, because we ask, you know, because the 30-day window is, they've determined the 30-day window, and they're the ones that aren't able to give us the information that we're requesting within the 30-day window. We're saying we're available, they're saying they can't give it to us.
Okay, so before we go on with the motion, do we wanna give any detail to what additional information that we're seeking from the applicant?
I think I wrote down that we would move to continue in order to enumerate the dimensions of the specificity that we seek, and at the same time seek an extension from the BOCC with Rise Stewardship and Health for the applicant to have adequate time to supply such information.
Do we want anything more specific? Are we looking at, can they give us a better idea of what the terminal square footage is gonna be? What the, you know, basic, you know, like mass, height, those types of, you know.
And I don't wanna give the FBO a free pass because they gave us a couple of renderings, I wanna see square footage and heights on that building as well.
Yeah, I was worried about, because their building, it's a one-story building, but it's actually designed to be able to go to two-story. And in the picture, it looked like it was a two-story building, but they don't have a floor in there. It's got a one-story with a big
30-foot
ceiling
tall,
as opposed to
one-story
like
building.
the way they do it in third world countries where they just put rebar sticking out to the next floor on all their buildings.
I mean, my thought is that the information we need, I don't think we can get the amount of information we need by April 28th. So really the goal that I would, if we make a continuance to April 28th, the goal of that meeting would be to articulate our findings of why or why not this application hasn't passed or is non-conforming to the BOCC, right? Isn't that really, I mean, where we're at now?
It's somewhat circular though,
Right.
right? Because you don't know what, you know, what are we reviewing?
Right.
Are we reviewing, okay, it's gonna be up to 140,000 square feet for the terminal, or not? And maybe it's way too short a period of time for, you know, for the consultants to pull all that stuff together.
Well,
But I guess the more information that we could get, the better it would be.
right, I mean, we can always just request
Yeah.
what we're looking for, and I'm looking for, you know, whatever air quality we have, because I know they have been studying currently, and I'm not sure how long, at least PM10s and PM2.5s. So if we throw out the nanoparticles, I know that they probably are there if there's PM10s and 2.5s, there's probably nanoparticles there too.
And I
So I mean, it's
understand
just
they're
kind of-
modeling the nanoparticles from the other readings they get, so show us the models, show us the data you have.
Right.
They've got noise monitoring stations that I understand have been working since 2024, give us the data you have.
Yeah,
Give us what you got.
We want information on the part 150?
That would be a whole process that would have to start. My understanding of the Part 150 is that is the only avenue. It was said earlier today that the FAA doesn't really allow you to control approach paths or altitudes or runway usage. It certainly doesn't outside of Part 150, is my understanding.
So
That's
is your
the avenue through
understanding-
which you have a little bit of traction. And just like we got traction with the curfew, I'd like to try to get that traction for this airport, because this airport's always been concerned about rural character, quality of community, et cetera, so let's use all the tools we can. Now, that being said, couple-year-long planning process. I don't know if we can use the noise data that we have as part of that. I don't know if that's advanced at all, but I certainly would like to see it advanced to help protect our community's environment and these affected neighborhoods.
Do we know if the part 150, I mean, is that an analysis at the airport? Is that an analysis of the noise on the approach path, departure path?
All of the above.
We could bring some additional information back on that, and particularly the sound studies we do have. My understanding of the Part 150, and I can look at this more, is that you're looking at exceeding the 65 DNL threshold in order to utilize Part 150 to generally obtain federal funding for mitigation efforts outside of airport property. The modeling that was included in the environmental assessment for the Aspen Airport property does not show 65 DNL exceeding off of airport property. Because that threshold has not been exceeded in those studies, and those are the
It's implied that the flight paths are gonna be lower, I guess.
the studies
From the air.
go off of, I mean, they do not only study the airfield itself, they study the surrounding area, but the measurable area, the sound thresholds, the sound contours for DNL 65 do not exceed off of airport property.
So is that-
Therefore-
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, please do.
Is that, cause usually I see it's DBA, right?
Yeah, so
Use
I
the
know there
sound
was some
measurement. What's
conversation
DNL?
about
What's DNL?
DNL versus a decibel reading. My understanding, and maybe Diane has some better explanation of it, is it's a measure over time.
It is over 24-hour period, so it's it's an average, so when you're talking like an aircraft event versus the DNLs that are
Right.
made, those contours are made of. You may see a spike from a particular aircraft that,
Do a regression analysis or whatever.
but it combines everything.
Correct, but for the purpose of the 150 analysis, you have to trigger that threshold in order to, it's a mechanism for gaining federal funding.
Got it.
So if you don't get to that threshold, the feds aren't gonna give you any money for that.
And
Is,
So the worse it is, maybe you get some money to help mitigate
That's
it,
right.
but if it's, not that bad,
Well-
then they're not gonna give you.
And if I,
Sort of, it's not just money, it's also, again, influence over flight paths and different approach
Oh, I
paths that are
see.
usable. This is the only way to get that influence, I won't say control, influence. I've seen some of the data out of the Airport Advisory Board, they haven't released much. Show us the data that's been put out there is from seasonal low periods or during COVID, to show us the data. We have to consider the data,
We-
to show us the data.
And so the concept then is, like, for example, yeah, I am a pilot, I've flown the approaches in and out, if you got somebody coming in and you gotta fly the Lynn's departure, you gotta go over to the right, you gotta whatever, come up to 7,500 feet, and then you can cut across, and then you're dumping your noise and your whatever over on these folks here, instead of on these folks here when you're doing a straight out departure. So I guess the Part 150, if we have the PNL, then maybe the airport or whatever, ATC or something would have control over requiring people to, take off on variable headings or something like that. You know,
And we have a little bit of that, now we have influence, not control. There's obviously safety that's paramount. And this is not only for today, but this is also for in the future, because you do come back. I was just looking at Centennial's, Centennial has a whole website on their monitoring. You come back every couple of years, you renew your study, you look at what's going on, and since you have the program in place, again, you can have this influence. You can go to the FAA and say, traffic is getting to such an extent that maybe we weren't at 65 when it started, but now we are, and we'd like to get these jets to avoid going over the WJ, say, which is taking a lot of noise. The worst case scenario, we obtain some money for the WJ or other homes or developments for noise abatement, for soundproofing. This could have an impact upon us too, because if we allow somebody to build a house in that area, we may require noise abatement. The FAA does have a whole series of tables about different land uses, like livestock or other agriculture, and what you can do in these areas within the noise affected area. So it is their own land use code, and we can tie that to 55 in our local community. The FAA does not preempt the local community, some people think. Now, we won't get additional funding from 65 to 55, but we can still, we're not giving away these neighborhoods and saying, you're subpar compared to the rest of the county, and you, even though the county has a 55, no, you're really 65, even though you're not, you don't have that standard anywhere in the county code, you just are, we're dumping on you.
So the county code exempts aircraft noise from the 55 decibel level. And similar to the Part 150, the Planning and Zoning Commission could make a determination that the noise impacts from the proposed project are not in conformance with the applicable master plans, whether it exceeds a decibel reading or a 65 DNL reading, whatever that may be. You could still find the increase in noise or potential increase in noise. We've heard some evidence to the contrary that maybe the noise will get quieter. You could use your fact-finding ability based on what you've heard in the record to say, well, there will be or there won't be some increase in noise or pollution, and we find that an unacceptable impact with respect to the master plans in question. To date, the environmental assessments we have for the airport do not trigger a Part 150 threshold to do that, but to Mr. Mason's point, maybe at some point in the future that could be triggered, but what we have to date does not have that. But again, to be clear, that doesn't mean the PNC couldn't say the noise impacts from the airport are not in conformance with the applicable master plans, so.
I'll make a motion that we continue this until April 28th. Encourage the applicant to bring back whatever data they may have on noise and pollution, any results that they are able to provide from whatever monitoring's been going on. And at least that'll start out the motion, and then there's a second, you can add to it or subtract to it.
Reed, did I hear you suggest that we also add that we need to know about the, that parcel that we're not hearing anything about now?
Well, I don't think,
It's not in the application.
it's not in the application, so
Tell them
I
to
don't
change
think
their
we can
application.
ask that. I don't think,
Can suggest it.
we can suggest it, but I think really what we
I'd like
need.
to suggest it, because otherwise I think it's gonna come back to bite us.
Let's, so if there's a second to the motion, then somebody can make another second. Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion by Joe, a second by Joe. Discussion before we.
Would you like to
make a
amend
vote?
it to add anything?
We can amend it to
else
add.
that you would like the county to suggest the applicant come back with
Well,
consideration at the April 28th meeting?
Yes, yeah, unless, I think you added what I was concerned about, and that's the environmental concerns, air quality,
Right,
noise.
whatever Charles's team could do to give us a little bit, more.
If by April 28th you have any like before and after full visual simulations or mock-ups that show us,
I'll have a full scale model.
yeah, thanks, John. I don't- It's like 24 hours a day,
Oh,
that,
with the balls.
whatever we can get, and I know it's, but
Whatever
whatever we
John-
can get to show that,
Whatever Jonathan can, supply that may be helpful for us to evaluate the MDO.
scale, massing, visibility,
Boxes with mass
impact from
height.
Highway 2, impact from Brush Creek or wherever, all those, any information that can give us some idea of where we can see if it's in conformance with the code standards of what extent says in the code that we're working with.
Could you pump jet fuel fumes into this room so we could
Yeah.
smell it?
If you wanna smell it, just walk the area of the ABC trail between Mountain Rescue and the underpass. And then even going under the underpass and hang out there at the end of the runway, while the plane's taking off.
So,
Cemetery Lane smells it too.
Oh, yeah, when you're skiing at the golf course, and probably the golfers too, but I don't know.
so we have a motion by Joe for a continuance to the 28th with some amendments for additional information. And Joe Mason has seconded it, and I'm gonna have a vote on the continuance. Debbie,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes,
Doug, Joe,
Yes.
and I vote yes, so
it's amazing. We very
continuance
rarely have a successful.
to April 28th. And then I would entertain a motion to adjourn if there's no further discussion. Thank you, everyone, for your
Thank you.
time. Thank you very much.
Right.